Yes.
The lead spring army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1210 of the War News stream. And right this very second, Israel's launching brand new attacks on the Iranian capital of Tehran right now. And we're seeing massive explosions in the capital, also smoke and flames being reported across many parts of Tehran. We're also hearing of preparations by U.S. forces to enter the war against Iran right this moment. And also the regional war is escalating once again dramatically even today. And we have very big news to cover, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the ongoing developments of the breaking news situation currently happening in the Middle East at this moment, as Israeli Air Forces just minutes ago have confirmed that they are now conducting a new wave of airstrikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital city, Tehran. We have been able to see video and picture evidence confirming multiple explosions throughout the area of the city, practically in every single region and quarter from northeast to southwest. We have also been able to hear significant developments as well that the United States of America appears to be poised to enter the conflict at any moment now, most likely within hours, as we've been able to hear that the United States of America has convened one of the longest National Security Council meetings seen so far in the 21st century, and that has concluded at this moment. We are not hearing of any expected statements or speeches by the President of the United States, but it is increasingly clear, due to ongoing troop transports flying from the United States into the Middle East at this moment, that American action inside the Middle East is an inevitable certainty at this point. We have also been able to hear additional details and information as well as of prior Iranian ballistic missile strikes that have been conducted throughout the day. The Islamic Republic of Iran has fired 3 ballistic missile strikes against the state of Israel in around the past 18 hours, and we have been able to confirm that the state of Israel shot down both 2 out of the 3 attacks with a significant amount of air interceptor efficiency, with 100% of all incoming missiles being shot down. However, in the recent attack, we were able to hear that some missiles did impact the state of Israel, and it does appear that there has been some limited damage on the ground. We do not have any information of casualties at the moment. U.S. naval forces have also steamed forward from Bahrain into the Persian Gulf at this moment to prepare for further hostile actions by the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are also hearing that the United States is considering a serious situation where the Islamic Republic of Iran may attempt to mine the Strait of Hormuz here within the near future. We are also hearing that the Israeli Air Force throughout the course of the day has been conducting significant and prolific airstrikes to target and destroy Iranian military equipment throughout the region. We have a significant amount of development to cover right now here on air that has happened just a few hours before we went live, and also the major breaking news developments that are coming out of Iran right now. I do once again want to remind everyone that we are going to be covering this news as it is going live and breaking at this moment, and for that reason we will be making sure to keep all up to date with the breaking news developments that we have at that moment. And for example, we have some news right now. Take it away, Matthew.
All right, so just some breaking news we're seeing right this very minute. So we are about to show you all apparently some photos and video evidence showing a massive explosion in Tehran. Right now, this explosion is being described by eyewitnesses as being the quote-unquote most terrifying explosion of the past few days, and the light from the explosion kept shining for 2 whole minutes as this explosion was happening. So whatever was struck, it was absolutely massive. We're not really sure what was struck, but it's inside of Tehran. So, and in fact, it's eastern Tehran, according to the report. So once again, we're about to show you all the video of that, but also we have another big story as well. A hostile drone incursion has been reported near the Dead Sea in southern Israel right this very second. And apparently, it's a very limited hostile drone incursion. It looks to be a very small attack, but there is an attack ongoing inside of Israel right this second, while Tehran's being attacked with these Israeli airstrikes at the very moment.
And we'll be waiting to see additional information and details and updates about the ongoing drone attack within the area of the southern Dead Sea that is happening at this moment. But we have been able to hear of significant airstrikes that were just conducted moments ago by the Israeli Air Force inside of the capital city of Tehran. We were able to get information confirmed by the Israeli Air Force that a new wave of attacks had begun inside the Tehran area, as published by the Israeli Air Force's main Twitter page. We are able to understand that this airstrike is once again following typical protocol and attack procedures that we've seen over the past few days, with most Israeli aircraft staging within the northern area of Iraq near to the city of Erbil and firing off their air-launched ordnance from that area. The ordnance has already impacted Tehran at this moment and is still in the process of hitting the city, as we are still getting multiple reports emerging from the city of different explosions and different reports of explosions throughout pretty much every single area of the city. We have been able to see some video and picture evidence of these explosions, including one right here, which appears to be coming from Narmak and Resalat, near to the northeastern area of the city of Tehran, which we can see in this clip right here. The actual
I've got some big news right now about this video that we're watching right now. So apparently, this right here is a target near the Kojir test stand, which is east of Tehran. That's what we're looking at right here. It's a highly sensitive military-industrial zone tied to Iran's missile and defense programs. So I presume, based on how large this explosion was, we could be looking at maybe a very large missile storage site that was struck. That is a theory right now that we're kind of running with, but it is the Kojir test stand for what it's worth.
And it does appear that we were able to get some information that this actually lies a little bit east of Tehran and inside the area of the Kojir National Park, or at least around the Kamard industrial area. This is a little bit outside of the most easterly portion of the city of Tehran, the major metropolis which houses 8.9 million Iranian citizens, and it does appear that that would line up, as we are seeing a more large mountain range that we can also see here on the satellite pictures that appear to be obscuring the actual base of the explosion, making it a little bit difficult to confirm what kind of size, shape, or style of compound is actually exploding behind that mountain range. However, we do have additional video and picture evidence showing multiple other airstrikes that were also just conducted moments ago throughout the city of Tehran, as we were able to see flames rising in multiple reports from the city, and we also were able to see air defense fire being conducted as well a little bit earlier in the day. It does appear quite clear at this point. I had to make sure that that was Tehran. I saw skyscrapers there. We actually have never seen a video in Tehran filmed from such a central area that we've even seen any of the skyscrapers. So really quickly there, I thought that may have been mislocated from Tel Aviv to Tehran. But this is the air defense fire inside of Tehran. It does appear that once again it's sporadic, uncoordinated air defense fire that so far has had a 0% efficiency rating in intercepting and shooting down any Israeli missiles or ordnance that has been fired at the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's the end of that clip right there. But moving on outside of that and on into our next clips as well, we have also been able to see some additional information on the strikes on Tehran in this picture right here. This appears to be somewhere close to the area of eastern Tehran, at least from what we have at the moment, but it is a different explosion than the one we just saw prior that came from the area of the Kojir Industrial Park. It does indicate that there are multiple explosions currently happening in Tehran at the moment, and we can also see what appears to be the smaller epicenters of two other explosions that were already smoldering by the time that this picture was made, highly suggesting that possibly a dozen Israeli missiles or bombs glided their way into the city and are impacting the area. We also were able to see even more video and picture evidence of these explosions coming from the area around the city of Tehran, which we can see in these clips right here as well. You see that this explosion has some sort of a pulsing light to it, and it's an incredibly interesting thing to note, as it is suggesting that it may be some sort of ammunition or electrical station that is on fire, at least in that particular explosion. We can also see the smoke rising over the mountain again. This is most likely a video of the Kajir Industrial Park, which appears to have been hit quite heavily in the airstrike, and we also were able to see another video, once again, similarly lining up to the explosion we saw at the beginning of the scene, or at the beginning of the news tonight, at the Kojir Industrial Park, which we can see in this clip right here. That's the end of the clips that we have right now of the airstrikes that have come out of Tehran, but we are still waiting for more developing information and news at this moment of those explosions and what specifically is happening inside of the city. We were able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has issued another one of their very theatrical and dramatic threats, as Iranian state TV, which somehow survived the initial interruption of their broadcast due to Israeli airstrikes, stated that tonight a great surprise will occur, one that the world will remember for centuries. The night's almost over. They only have about 3 hours until the night ends and daylight begins, so it appears that as of this moment, this threat has not been followed through on so far that the Iranian state TV issued to the public. It does appear, however, that the Israeli Air Force is ensuring that their abilities to make a situation that will be lasting for centuries is still quite a reality, as we were able to confirm that some Iranian missile defense systems near to the outside of the city, including this aging Hawk air defense system, was targeted and destroyed in the Israeli airstrikes that happened earlier today. And we could see the Israelis targeting and destroying that specific facility right there. The Israeli Air Force has actually been going after a significant number of missile defense sites throughout the area of the Islamic Republic of Iran, most likely to ensure that the Iranians do not have a way to intercept or shoot down any incoming Israeli attacks at all. We already see at this point that the interception rate is close to 0% and may actually be 0% at the moment, because we've not gotten any video or picture confirmation showing a confirmed shoot down of an Iranian missile or bomb anywhere inside the ongoing airstrikes. We also were able to see that the missile defense facility at Tabriz has also been destroyed as well. You can actually see this facility right here in the before picture and the after picture. It does appear that in the after picture, a large amount of the major structures inside of the compound have been completely leveled as a result of the ongoing Israeli airstrikes, and it does appear that this air defense site near to Tabriz has also been knocked out as well, along with the other two that we also were able to confirm were destroyed around the Tabriz area a little bit earlier on. It is also showing us that the Israeli Air Force is starting to open up the skies a lot more prolifically within the region, but we have brand new breaking news coming on out. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we do have some breaking news about the major explosion that we just saw in Tehran moments ago. So we have gotten a word from Fintech's network that apparently, according to their geolocation efforts, this is indeed the Iranian Kojir Garrison for Aerospace, which is a key military and aerospace facility near Tehran that we did see go up into this massive explosion that we see right here in the photo. So that was a very key site that has just been struck. Of course, we're not really sure what led to this massive explosion right here. I'd assume maybe rocket fuel or some ballistic missile storage site of some sort, but we're not really sure. But apparently it did hit that very sensitive facility that Iran has on the perimeter of Tehran toward the eastern side. Also, unfortunately, we do have some more footage of that in our second post there on our Twitter profile to show the audience.
And we're going to be taking a look at that really quickly, and we can actually see what appears to be a significant explosion coming from the area of the Kajir industrial facilities, and it does seem that this fire is sustaining itself, most likely showing that some form of propellant or highly flammable substance is now burning inside of the facility. This is also once again giving us a greater picture that Israeli airstrikes are able to reach a high level of efficiency, an efficiency that has not been seen so far by the Islamic Republic of Iran attacking Israel. It does appear that Israeli airstrikes at this point have a 100% efficiency rate. We have not been able to see that any of the missiles have been intercepted so far that the Israelis have fired into the Islamic Republic of Iran. We also were able to hear later on in the day that that the Fordo air defense systems have been confirmed to be destroyed as well, with picture evidence coming out showing the burned out husks and remnants of the main air defense battery or garrison that was near to the area of the Fordo nuclear site. We have also been able to hear that Israel has expanded their war goals to include the complete destruction of the Fordo uranium enrichment plant, as Israel will not stop striking Iran until it has damaged the deeply buried Fordo enrichment plant, according to the National Security Advisor Tsachi Hanagbi, according to his statement today on Tuesday. We also were able to see additional information as well, at least earlier in the day, showing that the Islamic Republic of Iran was continuing to fire ballistic missiles towards the state of Israel, although it appears that all attacks except for the last one were once again incredibly small in number, possibly suggesting that Iranian ballistic missile forces are now becoming depleted or fatigued in their abilities to keep up the sustained air operations that we have seen so far. Nevertheless, we actually do have more breaking news coming out of Tehran at this moment. What do we got?
All right. So, in addition to Israel striking the Kojir Garrison Aerospace Facility, which is on the eastern part of Tehran, we're now getting word that the Israeli military has expanded their strikes to also hitting refineries and oil depots near Tehran as well. That's ongoing right this very second. So, currently, we're waiting for more details, photos, and video evidence to show these refineries and oil depots getting hit. We are hearing on the ground apparently more reports of massive explosions around the city of Tehran. So it does appear that they are making impacts with these facilities. And right now we're seeing a brand new attack on the energy infrastructure of Iran by the Israeli military. So another expansion of the strikes right now.
We've also been able to hear of Israeli airstrikes against critical oil infrastructure in prior attacks. We have been able to see that the Shahran oil depot within northern Tehran was targeted and destroyed a short while ago by Israeli airstrikes. This facility is specifically within the northern region of the city, and you can actually see here that it also is listed as temporarily closed after the facility was completely destroyed by the Israeli airstrikes. We do understand that other critical infrastructure has also been hit around the city, and the reason why we're seeing that the Israelis are going after petroleum and gas production facilities and storage sites is that these sites actually house a great deal of economic potential for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran gets a large amount of their money from their petroleum and gas exports, very similarly to the Russian Federation. Both countries, both the Russians and the Iranians, can be described as economic monoliths due to the large reliance on their petroleum industries to create a base for their national economy, and for this reason, any Israeli strikes that are targeting and destroying oil refineries, gas production facilities, or any kind of gas or oil production sites is causing an insanely large amount of damage long term to the Iranian government's ability to raise funds to be able to continue their operations against the state of Israel or for their nuclearization programs, because they will no longer have the money or funds necessary to be able to conduct those sorts of actions. We've also been able to hear, in the meantime, speaking of not being able to conduct actions through a lack of money, it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran may be running out of the ability to conduct significant airstrikes due to a lack of manpower or some sort of a major shortcoming within their ballistic missile batteries, as we have been able to hear that a small amount of missiles was fired over 2 out of the 3 attacks earlier today, and we were able to hear that the third attack, which just occurred recently, appears to have had a larger number of missiles inside of it, but still was nowhere close to being at the size or scale of the original first attack that the Iranians conducted against Israel on the first night. We were able to see some footage of the interceptions that were being conducted over the state of Israel from this third and last attack, which we can show y'all right here in this clip. We can see some of the incoming Iranian ballistic missiles as well as the interceptors that have been fired by the state of Israel in an attempt to intercept them and stop them before they can hit the city of Tel Aviv. And we have more breaking news coming out at this moment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So right now we're getting word that the home front command inside of Israel is stating that the drone intrusion, event is now over near the Dead Sea. Apparently they were shot down, and it looks like whatever small amount of drones were heading toward this area of the Dead Sea have now been eliminated. So that threat is now over, according to the Israeli home front command. Also, by the way, we've gotten some very, very good geolocation footage from Fintech's network, and also a huge shout out to Fintech's network for this work. This is tremendous what they're posting on their Twitter page, and we do appreciate that. We can see here that on this post, they're showing us the exact location of the facility which was hit near Tehran, the Kojir facility that is an Iranian missile production area. So let's take a look at this and see. This shows you a really good idea of exactly where this is in relation to Tehran.
And if I am not mistaken, I actually believe that we were hovering over that just a brief moment ago, because we were looking at a mountain range out here in the distance. And let's see here. One second, let me close that down. Let's see. Is it out here? Yes, it is out here, actually. This is it. So this is the facility that we were looking at right here. And so it does appear that our original geolocations near to the Kojir National Park were largely correct, that we were able to make at a very quick glance a moment ago. And a huge shout out to Fitux News for being able to verify that information and show us that the missile facility is actually right over this very mountain range outside of Tehran. It does appear that this airstrike was successful. There is a large ongoing explosion within this area that is most likely showing us that solid rocket propellant housed inside the facility is on fire. Such facilities as these are always used in the production and manufacturing of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and it appears that the Israelis, through this airstrike, are most likely conducting an attempt to stop the Iranians from further producing any kind of ballistic missiles or cruise missiles that would be able to threaten the state of Israel into the future after the current strikes are over. We can once again see the large plume here, and everything is lining up to show us that this is solid rocket propellant that is on fire inside the area of the Kojir National Park at that missile production facility, or the Iranian Kojir Garrison Aerospace Facility. We can see that this smoke, while being incredibly large in plume, appears to be from a consistent fire below. We can also see light being emitted by that fire, and we can also see that the smoke is pure white in color. All of these things would indicate to us that solid rocket propellant is burning at a prolific speed and an incredibly large amount on the ground below. Also, due to the fact that this is not a significant singular explosion, it is also showing us that the roof has most likely been blown open on one of these larger buildings, and for this reason, the explosive force is able to vent slowly out of the top, while still violently, mind you, compared to what it could be, and that is what's causing this significant ongoing blaze over the mountains and these thick white smoke that we're seeing here on air. All of this is lining up exactly with the explosion of a solid rocket production facility, which is geolocated to be exactly in this area right here. This is still under construction, at least from our Google Maps satellite picture, but from what we could tell, according to Fitux News geolocation, which we could see right here, it appears that this satellite production facility, the solid rocket facility, was actually completed at some point, as we can actually see the completed structures here, also protected by earthworks around the outside of the buildings. That also could be used to contain the explosions and stop the further spread of explosive or volatile materials throughout the facility and causing a chain reaction explosion from building to building. Although that may be happening at the moment, because from what we can tell, even by the construction of these buildings earlier, they appear to be softer structures, and for this reason, any sort of significant fire explosion outside could possibly spread into the surrounding buildings and continue this fire on for minutes or even half an hour at this point. Still a significant hit to Iran's missile production abilities, considering that we're already seeing that the Islamic Republic of Iran is having a very difficult time even handling, managing, and firing off the ballistic missiles that they already have in storage, with about 1.8 thousand left at the moment. Outside of that, however, we have also been able to hear of the drone attack near to the area of the southern Red Sea beginning and ending already, as it appears that an Israeli helicopter most likely was dispatched to shoot down the incoming drone, which footage of that has been seen a good amount through the day. We have also been able to hear that the U.S. Embassy inside of Jerusalem system has been closed from Wednesday through Friday, which is possibly suggesting further U.S. action that may be occurring here incredibly soon. And speaking of further U.S. action, I believe it will be a little bit prudent for us to make sure to speak with all of y'all about ongoing U.S. developments inside the region, or largely inevitable developments of the United States inside of this region of the Middle East. To bring y'all over to the United States at the moment, we have been able to hear just about 20 to 30 minutes ago that transport troop carriers of the United States and heavy lift aircraft are already leaving the United States and heading out towards the Middle East. We can see the markers for multiple C-17 Globemaster 3s, as well as some supporting aircraft as well, which appear to be traveling out of the region, out of the United States, and towards the Middle East. This is not going to be a part of any NATO exercise, just to make that incredibly clear to many who may want to say that initially. All aircraft that have been dispatched from the United States so far and have flown across the Atlantic eastbound have been heading into the Middle East at this moment, and all confirmation has shown that that is the case. Any airborne stratotankers that are used in the current NATO exercises inside of Europe are being pulled from European air bases where those stratotankers have already been stationed, meaning that they are most likely, or not really most likely, they're entirely flying these aircraft out of the United States to make their way into the Middle East. Not only that, we have also been able to hear additional news from the United States that the president was supposed to give an urgent speech earlier in the day, but it appears that speech has now been canceled. We will not be hearing a speech from the president of the United States here within the very near future, or largely today at all, as it appears there was some sort of a video and photo press event that was scheduled to be conducted, and nothing else, at least at this point. It does appear, however, that U.S. involvement in the region is still highly likely, as we did hear that U.S. warships currently stationed near to the area of Bahrain had sailed forward into the area of the Persian Gulf to prepare for further U.S. actions within the region. We've also been able to hear that United States officials believe that the Islamic Republic of Iran may mine the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. was to enter the war. This would be a drastic action by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and would have to be one that's conducted rapidly if it was to have any kind of success. The Iranian Navy is incredibly small and very limited in its abilities to conduct air defense or any kind of offensive anti-ship abilities, and for that reason alone, they are largely working on a ticking time clock once the United States gets involved. If the United States doesn't outright destroy the Iranian Navy within its first opening barrage or volley of missile fire against the Islamic Republic of Iran, Iranian naval vessels will most likely race forward out of Bandar Abbas immediately and begin to mine the international waters in the Strait of Hormuz. This will largely block off any access from the outside world, the greater world at large, to the area of the Persian Gulf. And this will also ensure that any U.S. naval assets inside the Persian Gulf are stuck in the Persian Gulf, having to be sustained by U.S. airlifts that would continue to supply the naval forces that are there. And it also would ensure that there is no access into the Persian Gulf if any oil vessels needed to reach the area. Meaning, in general, that by the Iranians conducting this action, a large amount of the world's oil resources will be cut off. This will immediately result in a rapid increase in the price of oil, and this will start to cause very significant fallout throughout the global markets and economies, as we will start to see that transportation costs exponentially increase due to the cost of fuel. This is something that the United States is most likely seriously considering in its war planning, and will most likely see that when the United States gets involved, that one of the key targets being hit and destroyed will be the Iranian naval bases and vessels in Bandar Abbas, along with other locations as well, such as Bushehr and the smaller basings of the Islamic Republic of Iran's Navy in Chabahar as well. Outside of that, though, we also do have more information and more breaking news coming out of this moment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so I'm getting some more video coming out of the major explosion which we saw at the Kojir site inside of Tehran. We are seeing the exact video showing the first seconds of the strike, actually, and showing us the very large glow that the eyewitnesses were saying were blinding. You literally could not look at it. It was so bright. So let's take a look and see what they saw.
We see the explosion was actually so large, it actually pretty much lit up the entire night sky, except for the small funnel above where the smoke cloud was already being created.
Would that be a rocket fuel, like consistently being on fire, that causes light like that? Because that's a very consistent light source for like a momentary explosion.
that actually would be pretty indicative of a solid rocket fuel fire. We have seen in the past, for example, to bring y'all back to another major conflict that we've been covering a lot over the years, which is the Russo-Ukrainian war. We have seen that whenever Ukraine has been able to target and successfully hit any solid rocket production facilities, including the one that was outside the city of Vodkinsk, or largely within the center of it, there was a large, sustained, bright fire that came from the area for minutes on end, as a large part of the solid rocket propellant in the city was caught ablaze and was burning. It doesn't appear that these solid rocket propellants ever burn in an immediate flash-off or a violent explosion, like the ammonium nitrate that exploded inside the port of Beirut in 2020. Solid rocket propellant usually burns at a fairly steady clip, and so it does appear that based off of this video evidence alone, that this certainly was a solid rocket propellant burn-off that was happening after the airstrike hit the facility and was able to cause a fire.
Interesting. It does look like that, indeed.
I mean, you can already see the bright white plume of smoke beginning to rise over the side of the mountain. Once again, the bright white smoke, a clear indicator of a solid rocket propellant explosion and fire that is happening over the mountain. We now see that the fire is starting to die down on the ground, but usually these fires are a little bit erratic. They can pick up and drop off at any given moment whenever they get access to a larger supply of solid rocket propellant that's been untouched at the moment. And we see once again that erratic kind of fire pattern where the fire is picking up and dropping off behind the hill in a very erratic fashion that is once again showing us that this is some sort of a greater solid rocket propellant fire. As a matter of fact, there is more information to back this up that we actually have from just the last week when we were not covering this pretty much every single day. We were able to cover our usual news cycles. We actually have a little bit of information here. Now, let me make sure to go grab it really quickly. And I believe this is the map. And this would be the map. So let me take you all over here because I want to make sure that we were able to corroborate this for all of our viewers that we have at the moment and let y'all know a little bit more information about these kinds of propellant fires, like the one we're seeing right now outside of Tehran. South of the city of Tambov, inside of the Russian Federation, is a city called Kotovsk. And Kotovsk is largely a city whose entire industry, at least local industry, revolves around a significant gunpowder manufactory within its city perimeter. You can actually see it right through here. It's pretty much this entire left side of the city that is heavily forested. That is the gunpowder manufacturing plant. And when we saw this explosion here, it actually had a lot of similarities to the Kotovsk gunpowder plant explosion that we were able to see just last week. And to really quickly show you all that, I need to go and find the clip that shows us the fire from a significant distance here. And this is actually it. You can actually see once again that it is a sustained fire. It's a fire being caused by burning propellant, and it once again has that erratic pattern to it where it rapidly lights up and then drops off very quickly. We've seen this multiple times throughout the war in Ukraine, and we've definitely seen that at least in the area east of Tehran, that there is a significant propellant fire that is going on at that missile production plant, which once again I'll make sure to show y'all is just on the very western edge of the Kajir National Park. It is this facility right here that was still under construction, at least when we were showing it on satellite footage here, but later on we were able to confirm that this structure was intact and was operational when it was targeted and destroyed by the Israeli airstrike earlier today. We are still waiting for more video and picture evidence to come out of Tehran at the moment from the airstrikes that were just conducted against the Islamic Republic, but it does appear that at this moment we are able to confirm that a significant and deathly blow has been dealt to that large missile production facility just outside of Tehran. We also were able to hear that the United States of America, once again getting back to the story about the Strait of Hormuz, is seriously considering most likely preliminary or preemptive strikes against the Iranian Navy to stop the Iranian Navy from being able to race forward and close off the Strait of Hormuz and cause untold economic damage to the entirety of the world as a fallout or a consequence of the ongoing military actions being conducted between Israel and the Islamic Republic. We also were able to hear that in some additional information as well, that the Israelis are once again saying that they will not stop the conflict until they are able to damage and destroy the Fordow enrichment facility, which is still deep underground, and at least according to information at the moment, appears to have actually been minimally damaged in the original attacks, but has not been completely damaged or destroyed, at least at this moment. So we are going to be waiting for more evidence and news coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran at this moment, and specifically the ongoing airstrikes in Tehran. But Matthew, do we have any additional video or picture evidence that is coming out at this moment?
All right. So right now, this very second, we are getting news from allegedly, and remember, this is from Iran, so take it with a grain of salt. Iran's Revolutionary Guard is claiming they used Fatah-1 ballistic or hypersonic missiles in their attacks on Israel tonight. So we have heard that claim before, and they're claiming they've done it again tonight. So I don't really see any evidence of that, but they're claiming that they launched Fatah hypersonic missiles at Israel tonight. Also, by the way, we do have some more breaking news right now. Let me scroll down to it. The Iranians are also issuing some crazy threats once again. Right now, Iran's Revolutionary Guards are saying that it will end the Israeli air defense myth once and for all tonight. So, once again, let's see what time it is in Iran right now. Time in Iran. It is currently 3:30 a.m. in the morning right now inside of Iran. So they only have a few more hours of night cover to be able to attack Israel. So I'm not really sure what they're planning on doing here, but the Iranians are claiming they're going to launch another very large attack on the Israelis to end the air defense myth. So, sounds to me like a bunch of hype talk, but we'll have to see exactly what happens with that.
We'll have to see what happens. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has been making statements every single night that this will truly be the end and Israel is cooked. And we've seen that every single night the Israelis survive and they end up hitting the Iranians even harder the next day. So it appears that this may be another bluffing statement by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and a part of their usual rhetorical statements that they've been making, because there's absolutely no credence or proof at this point that any of their claims have been true so far, and we're highly doubting that they'll be true at any point in the future. However, it does appear that they are having to wait and largely bide their time as the U.S. is starting to show up, as we were able to see a decent amount of troop transports leaving the area of the United States and heading towards the area of the Middle East. There's a significant amount of C-17 Globemasters as well as other support aircraft that are still transporting or flying their way into the area of the Middle East along with their cargo and equipment that is showing us that the United States is still setting up in staging for a longer involvement or a larger involvement in the conflict, which obviously is going to be going on for quite some time, longer than we're seeing right now. We are hearing that it appears that there is no end in sight. The Israelis will not be stopping their offensive actions until they are able to destroy the Fordow facility. And considering that the Israelis largely do not have the ability to destroy the Fordow facility from the air, this means that the United States will have to get involved, and this means that the conflict is guaranteed to continue until the United States gets involved, which we are assuming will be hours or days from this point. We are still waiting for more information on that at this time, as we did hear that the President of the United States was continuing to make some pretty fiery statements today, stating that the Iranians have to unconditionally surrender, and their time is up, and that in his words, and of course we're not getting political here on the channel, but I will state some of the things that he said, that America first now means the destruction of the Islamic Republic of Iran, according to his words. So it does appear that we are seeing that there are quite some significant developments and changes of thought coming out of the President of the United States' office, but we do have more breaking news at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so right now we're hearing the Iranian state media repeat the wild claim that tonight there will be a surprise that the world will remember for centuries. Once again, Iran's making a lot of saber-rattling statements right now, but not really carrying through with them or making them actually have a material retaliation sense behind it. So it sounds like I've said before, a bunch of hype. But also, by the way, we're hearing an absolutely wild claim right now from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps that the Fatah missiles, their hypersonic missiles, have given Iran complete control over the Israeli airspace. That is delusional to the 10th degree right there. There is no complete control over Israeli airspace whatsoever. So the Iranians are delving into insanity at this point. To me, that sort of indicates they're getting desperate, and they're also trying to cope. Because they're losing so badly. So no evidence whatsoever of control over Israeli airspace being given to the Iranians. But on the other hand, though, over Iranian skies, Israel does have control over that. That is the one place that is in full control, is Iranian skies. So it looks like a lot of cope coming from Iran right now.
And it does appear that there is quite a great deal of cope coming from the Iranian government at the moment and the IRGC, as it's quite clear that the Iranians have no control of anyone's airspace at the moment, much less their own. We already see that as of yesterday, Israeli Hermes drones were able to fly around the airspace pretty much without a care in the world. Why don't we go get the footage of that really quickly, because it's actually quite shocking to see something like this. This is a Hermes 450 drone, and let me go get the Hermes 450 to show this to all of y'all. This is the Elbit Hermes 450. This is an Israeli drone similar to that of a Reaper or a Predator drone here in the United States, or a Bayraktar in Turkey. It does appear that these drones were visibly seen over Tehran the other day and were not shot down. They were able to operate continuously over the airspace without a single threat coming their way.
And also, not to mention the fact that the United States is even claiming that the United States has full control over Iranian airspace. So right now, it's kind of a debate who's really got control over Iran right now. It's clearly not the Ayatollah, but it could be the U.S., Israel, or a combination of both that have control over Iranian airspace right now. So, you know, that's wild to really think. The entire airspace of Iran is pretty much wide open and not in control of the government that is still in power inside of Tehran.
And that is a significant failing in the modern warfighting age, as if you do not have any air defense or any ability to defend your skies, you are quite open, truly, to any kind of attacks that could occur and the destruction that would follow. If you lose all of your air defense systems, which it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran has lost most, if not all, of their systems, you are guaranteed to be losing a lot of additional equipment and personnel on the ground, because the enemy can now strike you and destroy you from the above without even being touched, and pretty much soften you up for the ground forces to come in and pretty much clean up whatever's left behind. So it's incredibly clear at this point that the Iranians do not have a hope in the world, and if the United States gets involved, it's largely over for them. And it is inevitable at this point that the United States is going to be getting involved, at least from what we can tell right now. But beyond that, we do understand that there is still additional information coming out at this moment, as we are still hearing and waiting for future developments from the airstrikes in Tehran and the inevitable or eventual response by the Iranians against Israel, and also the future involvement of the United States. And in the meantime here, we actually do have an interesting question that we've asked all of y'all. Is the United States about to enter the war with Iran? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So right now, that is a very highly anticipated question right this second. Is the United States actually going to enter the war against Iran, start participating in these offensive strikes against Iranian nuclear infrastructure and also Iranian cities as well? That's a big question. So 53% said yes, a full-scale entrance to the United States will be happening very soon, while 16% said now the USA will pretty much be limited to defense only, and 14% said no, the USA will leave it to Israel, and that will be the end of the story. And based on what we're hearing so far, we're hearing from Israeli sources and also U.S. sources that it sounds like it's more likely than not that the USA is going to enter this war in the coming days, and perhaps even sooner than that. So I'm going to be with the 53%. I think a full-scale entrance is coming soon, and what that will look like, only time's going to tell. But I think the USA is going to enter the war, and that is going to escalate things quite a bit, which will cause issues in the Strait of Hormuz and also across the region as well. And it will, of course, destabilize things a little bit further, but it might be necessary to take out the fortified nuclear site at Fordo, and the U.S. might have to get involved for that reason. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that a full-scale entrance to the conflict is going to be inevitable at this point by the United States. It has become increasingly clear by U.S. military actions and CENTCOM command, along with the distribution of more equipment and personnel into CENTCOM at the moment, along with the United States diplomatic posturing, that the United States of America is no longer looking to engage or entertain talks of any variety or type with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and are hell-bent on the Islamic Republic of Iran's destruction and the complete destruction of their nuclear facilities. So with that in mind, I would have to say that I'm clearly with the 53%. A full-scale entrance of the United States into the ongoing conflict is going to be pretty much an inevitable certainty at this point. And so with that, I hope we were able to address that incredibly well. And in the meantime, Matthew, do we have any breaking news, developments, or information that we have at this moment? And it does appear that we do, so please take it away.
All right. So right this very second, we are getting word that the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, expanded upon their crazy statement, claiming that they have control over Israeli airspace. Here's the entire quote. They said, tonight's missile attack on Israel showed that we have gained complete control over the skies of the occupied territories and that its residents have become completely defenseless against Iranian missile attacks. That is the official statement from the IRGC. Which is just they must be in a different parallel universe or something, because I'm not seeing that in any capacity whatsoever. The only place, like I've said, that currently has major attacks ongoing is Tehran, which has no air defense right now of any meaningful sort. So it's just crazy, honest. I'm not really sure how to comment on this because it's not in reality. This is delusional to the umpteenth degree. But Enforcer, how do you weigh in on this wild quote that's been expanded upon by the Iranians?
It's absolutely insane. There's just no proof or verification of this claim at all. And not only that, it's interesting to note that they're saying that the residents of Israel are completely defenseless against Iranian missile attacks instead of the Israeli military. You can kind of see how they're losing right now by a statement like this. They have hardly attacked the Israeli military once so far in the ongoing exchange. Over 6 days now, we have not seen a singular attack at the moment against the Israeli military. Hardly ever has it happened. In fact, it's hardly ever happened at all. But instead, the Israeli civilians are the ones that are the main targets that are being attacked by the Iranians. That isn't really doing much to actually change the outcome of what's happening right now. It actually is a little bit fortunate, at least for the Israelis on a strategic level, that the Iranians waste all of their resources attacking Israeli civilians instead of the Israeli military, because if the Iranians actually put the same amount of time and care and BS that they're putting right now into trying to attack the Israeli civilians into the military, they may have actually ended up damaging the Israeli military a little bit in their opening strikes on the first day. But instead, they have pretty much focused entirely on conducting terroristic actions only and attacking Israeli civilians, and as a result, it's going quite poorly for them. It appears that it's going poorly on just about every single level. But beyond that, this statement is also entirely delusional. We've never seen a statement that has been this incorrect before. They don't even have control over the capital city's airspace in Tehran, much less over Israeli airspace, with an active Israeli Air Force still operating over the nation, and also over northern Iraq as well, still conducting airstrikes into Iran. But with that, I hope we were able to address that well, at least in our opinions. But we do have more news coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So right now I'm following a news story that just came out that the United States president is reportedly going to have lunch with the chief of army staff of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I guess the fella here is coming from Pakistan to America to have lunch. I would presume that the president's not going to Pakistan to have lunch with the chief of army staff of Pakistan. So that's a pretty interesting story. And of course, Pakistan was rumored by the Iranians to be threatening nukes against the United States or Israel if Iran was attacked any further. So it sounds like maybe Pakistan is showing some type of solidarity with the United States by having this luncheon tomorrow. But quite interesting to hear that Pakistan is meeting up with the United States president at some point tomorrow. So quite interesting to hear.
It appears that the President of the United States is going to be having a lunch with the Army Chief of Staff or the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan tomorrow, or as some people may put it, he may be eating the guy's lunch. We're not entirely sure at the moment. We'll have to wait and see what kind of developments going on there. But still, that's a fairly interesting one out of all of the news that we're getting out of Iran right now, to hear that the President is going to be having a lunch with the Chief of Army Staff from Pakistan tomorrow at 1 p.m. We still have not gotten any confirmed statements or information at the moment that the President of the United States will make a statement on the ongoing situation inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran or largely in the Middle East as a whole. We have not been able to hear anything that's indicating that significant statements will be coming out on that anytime soon at the moment. So we are still waiting for additional information about the U.S.'s posturing or the U.S.'s position on the conflict, as it did appear inevitable earlier today, at least, that the U.S. President was going to be coming out and making a statement largely saying that we were going to be getting involved inside the Middle East, but we've not been able to see that statement so far, and we have also not been able to see any kind of action being taken by the United States in a hostile form against the Iranians yet. So we'll still be waiting for future developments and information on that at the time. But Matthew, do we have any more news coming out at this moment?
All right, so we have a little bit of news here, just an interesting piece of side news right now that apparently we're getting word from the Italian Prime Minister. This is the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, has emphasized that the Iran nuclear crisis must be resolved through diplomatic dialogue, noting that current efforts have yielded no results. Honestly, I disagree with the Italian Prime Minister completely on that. I would say it's a little bit out of touch. Clearly, we're seeing results on the ground. Israel's going in and striking pretty much every nuclear facility that Iran has at their disposal, and it's clearly causing a lot of destruction. So I would say I disagree with that completely. I'm not sure why the Italian Prime Minister is saying that, because that is not really reality right there. But Enforcer, how do you weigh in on that statement?
I don't even know how to weigh in on that statement. It doesn't really sound like it's founded in a lot of reality or sense at the moment. So we will have to see what they mean by that. I don't really think it'll have much of an impact on anything, though, at the moment. But in the meantime, though, we will be covering a recap of the information that we have right now for folks who are coming in at this moment. We have been able to hear that just minutes ago, the Israeli Air Force did conduct a significant airstrike around the area of Tehran. We were also able to get additional information that one of the significant targets hit was actually within the area of the Kojir National Park. It was this specific solid missile production facility right here, which is responsible for producing a significant number of ballistic missiles used by the Iranian military. So far, it's a significant amount of damage has been dealt. We were able to see a large explosion that emanated from the facility that was around 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes long and appears to have caused a large amount of damage at the facility. We have not been able to get any video or picture evidence from the ground yet at the facility, but we have been able to see videos from miles away inside of Tehran showing the sheer scale of the explosion and fire that followed. Even with it being shrouded behind a mountain, it was pretty much entirely wiped out. We were able to hear some additional information as well that the Israelis have also struck some other targets within the city of Tehran and throughout the day have been targeting and destroying significant air defense sites throughout the area of the entirety of Iran. We were able to hear that the air defense at Fordow has now been destroyed along with the air defense at Tabriz, and we've also been able to hear that there have been some ongoing airstrikes and explosions down at another missile base inside the area just west of Isfahan that was also attacked by the Israelis today in this clip. We see some debris strewn out across the road, but that's the end of our clip right there and all we have from that area. But it does appear that that missile base was also significantly hit as well. Outside of that, we were able to hear that apparently the Iranians have claimed in some of their 3 airstrikes conducted today that the Fata 1 was used, which is a little bit of a dubious claim, as through the 3 airstrikes that were conducted today by the Iranians against Israel, we saw that 2 of the launches were actually completely intercepted, and the 3rd launch had some missiles that made it through, but it was also a far larger launch in scale, with around 30 ballistic missiles being used. The Israelis have been able to intercept a significant amount of missiles fired at them today, and we also have video and picture evidence of those interceptions, while the U.S. Embassy inside of Jerusalem has now officially closed from Wednesday to Friday. Simultaneously, we have also been able to hear that the Israelis are stating that there are key indicators that the U.S. will soon launch strikes on Iran in support of the state of Israel, and we've also been able to hear that Netanyahu was talking with senior security officials and ministers just a short while ago. We also got to see that in the ongoing interceptions today, there was a failure of another Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile that was fired in the defense of Israel, but appears to have completely failed. And here's that clip right here. We see the missile once again failing, and it appears to have actually broke up over the skies and then landed somewhere below. We were not able to confirm if anyone was wounded or killed in the course of that failure, but it was a significant failure, once again, of the Arrow 3 system. There are going to be missiles in every missile system that are duds, and it appears that the Israelis have ran into 2 duds so far over the course of about 6 days of air defense from the Arrow 3 system. In general, the Arrow 3 is actually doing quite good, as failure rates are usually higher in other air defense systems that have been used by other countries around the world in conflicts that we followed so far. far. We also did get to hear that earlier on, involved in that airstrike, there were more air alerts, which pretty much affected the entirety of central and northern Israel, from the Tel Aviv area all the way up to the port of Haifa and its surrounding cities as well. But it does appear that those airstrikes were largely thwarted, except for the third one, which had a few missiles that were able to successfully hit the city of Tel Aviv. We have been able to get a lot of video and picture evidence out of the state of Israel, as it does appear that the Israelis are now trying to censor as much of the video information that we can get that is trying to make its way into the public. So we are not able to get a lot of video or picture evidence of the damage on the ground at this moment, although we can confirm that several Iranian missiles did hit the city of Tel Aviv overnight. So with that, we are still waiting for more breaking news and developments at this time that have been coming from the airstrikes inside of Tehran. But Matthew, do we have any additional news that you've been able to find at this moment?
All right, so we're also getting some more reports of massive explosions being heard inside of Iran right at this very minute, apparently near Kianpars and Kianabad, areas of Avaz. So right now we're hearing of huge explosions in those regions of Avaz in Iran, and that is currently the ongoing attack that we're hearing about at this very moment. Also, by the way, we're getting reports that more than 600 people of 17 different nationalities have fled into Azerbaijan from Iran in the past 5 days since the start of the war between Israel and Iran. Also, that's a very big story as well, because I would imagine that number is probably much higher than it's being reported right here in this post, because we've seen a lot of people flooding into border checkpoints and trying to flee from Iran completely to get out of the entire country, that I'm sure that number is much higher. So it looks like Azerbaijan appears to be one of the main countries they're fleeing to, but I would imagine that Turkey, Armenia, and probably any country that's bordering as well, or close to bordering, is probably also taking in some of these Iranian refugees. I would imagine so, but those are the two big stories happening at the moment.
And we'll be waiting for more additional news of the explosions in Avaj at the moment. Avaj is a larger city within the area of southwestern Tehran, near to the Iraqi border, that has a great deal of petroleum refineries that are based around the city. It is possible that a steel factory, which is also within the southern city area of the city as well, may have possibly been hit inside of the strikes, but we are not able to confirm the exact location of these explosions yet in Avaj. We are still trying to get that information at this moment. We also are able to hear that right now we're generally waiting for more breaking news developments that hopefully will be happening on air sometime soon. But for now, it does appear that there's been a slight lull after the Israeli airstrikes in Tehran ended, and we're still waiting for more information to come out of Avaj at the moment, since airstrikes are now hitting that city at this very moment in time as we're live on air. And so with that, I do understand that many people have been talking about the current situation inside of the Iranian government, or largely the statement that the U.S. president has called for Iran's unconditional surrender. And a lot of people have been talking about this. And Matthew, what do we got on that?
All right, so we've asked the entire audience a very interesting question here. It says the U.S. president has called for Iran's unconditional surrender on Truth Social, and will Iran be forced to accept? And also, what a crazy world we live in. We're hearing demands for surrender over Truth Social. Quite interesting. But 35% said no, the Iran regime will be martyred instead of surrendering, while 27% said yes, an unconditional surrender can be expected very soon coming from Iran. And only another 27% said only if the United States enters the war will Iran actually consider and be forced to accept an unconditional surrender. And I would say, generally speaking, based on what we've seen so far, it looks like how extreme the mindset is in the Iranian regime is that they would probably be martyred, first of all. Now, if they have the chance to run to Russia or another country like that, they might take that option instead. But if it comes down to between surrendering or becoming a martyr, I think based on the mindsets we're seeing right now, they probably will be martyred. And they probably won't have a choice in the matter, because Israel knows the current location of Khamenei, and they know the location of the other top government officials as well. And basically, they could be taken out at any second. Like, their life is in peril right now because Israel has basically targets on them, and they can pull the trigger at any moment. So I would say generally I'm with the 36%. I think that the Iranian regime probably will be martyred, or they'll flee if they have that side option. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say that in my opinion, I do believe that a decent amount of the Iranian government will most likely be martyred, as an unconditional surrender will probably see the dismantling of the Iranian government by the Iranian people. As a sign of significant weakness such as this will most likely lead to an uprising and a lack of confidence by the Iranian military, or possibly other elements of the armed wings of the political factions of Iran, and we could see that this government comes to an end anyways, meaning that a radical regime, or a radical and extremist regime such as this, really has no other option option rather than to continue on until the very end, until their inevitable destruction or demise. And so I believe that the Iranians will actually have to continue to press on and refuse any attempts or statements of unconditional surrender until we see that the Islamic Republic is completely destroyed by combined coalition forces of the Israelis, the United States, and the United Kingdom. I believe that's most likely going to be the case, because I'm not really seeing any other outs right now for the Iranian government. And so we'll be waiting to see if we get any other additional information right now at this moment, because it is still quite an interesting and developing situation at the time. And so with that...
Also, another interesting thing as well is Israel did say this morning that they know the exact location of Khamenei. Like I mentioned a moment ago, Khamenei is hiding out in a bunker somewhere in Tehran, probably near the Lavzan neighborhood, I would imagine. But we were not told the exact location. They're keeping that secret for OPSEC reasons. But that is a bit wild that Khamenei literally knows the Israelis have a bomb pointed at his head right now, and there's nothing that he can do to basically run from it because Mossad is all over the streets of Tehran. And if he moves, I'm sure they have lookouts and spotters that will obviously pick up on him moving his position. So that is a bit of a bad position to be in right there. Right now, I think the only thing holding Israel back from taking Khamenei out is the United States at the moment. I think the United States is still objecting to taking Khamenei out and eliminating him, and that's currently on the table, but the U.S. has not given their blessing to Israel to do that just yet. And honestly, it's a bit of a 50-50 on that, because if they take Khamenei out, they will create a martyr, which has a bad side effect. But also, if they leave him alive and he escapes to Russia, he could wield influence from a third-party country, whether it being Russia, China, or somewhere else. He could still wield influence and try to stage uprisings from a third-party country. So it's a bit of a tricky choice. Like, I know some people were like, it's pretty clear that Khamenei should not be allowed to escape. But at the same time, though, it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit of a tightrope with that one, because with the ideology behind the guy, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that him becoming a martyr could have a powerful effect.
And it could possibly have a powerful effect, but at the same time, his escape could also have a fairly powerful significance as well, as we've been able to see that al-Jilani, who is pretty much the leader of the Syrian interim government at the moment, is still dealing with uprisings of loyalists to the Assad regime throughout a significant area of Syria. And that largely is because Assad is able to coordinate and conduct these uprisings from his life in exile in Moscow in the Russian Federation. So it is highly likely that if Khamenei does survive, he may end up becoming that very kind of a spinster, if you want to call him that, from the Russian Federation, who's able to continue uprisings or some acts of terror inside of Iran, even while he is living in exile in another foreign country. That is somewhat likely. However, there's also a decent amount of chances for negative consequences with his death, as we could see his death could start to spurn even more radical factions to go into hiding, like the IRGC, and to be able to once again conduct terrorist operations and to possibly create an even more collapsed or splintered sort of a situation at the moment with those radical forces, as we can see that multiple groups begin to splinter off from the IRGC and begin to operate however they want in their specific kind of, I guess you could say, ethos, or at least their belief systems, which would be a pretty difficult situation for a future Iranian state to deal with. Beyond that, however, it does appear that we are seeing that this situation is a fairly precarious one, and we'll have to see that hopefully the United States deals with it as fragilely as possible, while also giving it the amount of firepower that's necessary at this point. But still, at this moment, Matthew, do we have any other additional news that is coming out at this time?
So right now, at this very moment, I'm not seeing any breaking news happening right this second. It looks like we've entered a bit of a news lull right now. There are reports of apparently still explosions happening in Iran, but we're not getting any video evidence of those strikes right now at this very moment. So it appears to be, shockingly enough, as we thought it was about to really be popping off here, it looks like momentarily it has gone into a momentary pause. So, of course, we are entering right now. Let's see what time it is in Iran. It's 4:02 a.m. right now in Iran. So the daytime morning hours are starting to come into view right now. And of course, it will be daylight very soon, at least another hour or so. So it looks like the attack window is starting to wane a bit, at least for the momentary situation right now. And that could be the situation for a little while.
And so with that in mind, we'll be trying to see and wait if there's going to be any other major developments at the moment, but it does appear that since the Israeli airstrike has concluded, there's been no major actions conducted by the Israelis or the Iranians outside of the explosions we've heard of in Avaj. We're still waiting for video and picture evidence on that one at the moment, but for now, it does appear that we've entered a small lull. And I think, Matthew, that it would probably be a good time to be able to address a couple of questions in the meantime while we're still waiting for more news to come out here soon.
Yes, indeed. And with that, we're jumping into our first super chat, which goes to Joe in the Box, who just threw in a very generous $200 donation. And thank you very much, Joe in the Box, for that massive support. That is by far the biggest support, and we do appreciate that very much. And that does help to keep us running. And Joe said, I had to rush to work to get this stream open to find out the real news. And thanking you for your work, and we appreciate the efforts.
And thank you for the massive support, Joe in the Box. And thank you so much for enjoying our news. We're trying our best here to be on air every single day whenever the major news developments are going down, and to be able to try and cover them the best we can. I've got to thank you massively once again for being one of the folks who's supporting this channel and helping it to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. It is the case, and I'll really quickly show y'all here because there's probably a lot of new people here, that we actually have quite literally no monetization on our streams, and we also do not have sponsors on these streams either. And so the support from viewers like Joe in the Box is a massive part of how we make this channel possible, because if it wasn't for them, we quite literally would not be able to make a living doing this and do this as our full-time job. And so I got to thank you massively for support, Joe in the Box, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air making this news possible right now. I also have to say that since we have about 35,000 people here with us live right now, if you are enjoying our news coverage so far, and hopefully we'll have more to cover here in the future, as this is a very high tempo sort of a situation, and usually there's a lot of rapid developments happening on a day in and day out basis. If you have enjoyed so far, please make sure to subscribe. We'd love to have y'all here. We've been able to make it up to nearly 418,000 subscribers. Well, actually 408,000 subscribers at this point, correction there. And we would love to know that more people continue to join our channel to be able to get the breaking news from the Enforcer's news channel, or the Enforcer news channel. If you subscribe, we pretty much do this every single day whenever there's any kind of a major bit of news to cover. And so I hope that we do see y'all subscribe and join us for this news coverage. And in the meantime, we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment. And so what do we got, Matthew?
Also, unfortunately, do not play this entire video to show pictures or images of it. It's from the Iranian news state media. So right now we're getting word that the Iranian state media has posted a video with an image of a miniature nuclear warhead, and it looks like they have a soldier petting the miniature nuclear warhead and saying maybe in the caption. So you know, this is just more like mind games right here that Iran's playing on everybody. This is a bit of a joke, if I do say so myself. And how stupid to like be playing with a mini nuke like that, and also alluding to the fact they could try to nuke Israel or the United States. It's just stupidity at its finest. But there you can see in the video, or at least in the images, a fellow petting a nuke right there in the video.
This is the first time I've ever heard of anyone petting a nuclear weapon. Seems a little bit interesting. And I also have to say that apparently the Israelis and the United States have gotten so far into Iran's mind that they never just put anything in Arabic or Farsi. It's always in Hebrew and English as well, every single time. Largely because this isn't for the benefit of the Iranian people. This is more so for the benefit of the U.S. and Israel, and trying to provoke some sort of fear or pandemonium in the public. But I would generally assume that they do not have a nuclear weapon, because with how badly they've been beat over the past few days and still have not used a nuclear weapon, this seems to largely be some sort of a hoax or hype talk at the moment by the Iranian government. We are able
to... Also, that video most likely is created with AI, I would imagine. That looks like most likely a synthetic video that doesn't look real. I mean, obviously, that's not a real nuke he's holding in his hand right there. That's some type of like machine piece of metal with a yellow cap on the top of it. So it's obviously not a nuke. But the idea behind it is, like the Enforcer's saying, just to scare people. So, you know, it's some type of AI created image right there. And that's just what it is, just a complete joke.
It is an absolute joke. It honestly is a little bit hilarious with how big of a joke this really is. Once again, fear-mongering at its finest by the Iranians. Nevertheless, we are once again going to be getting back into our questions in the meantime, while we're still waiting for more news to develop at the moment. But a big thanks to Joe in the Box once again for his support, and massive support in helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to AJ Lenhart, who puts in a $100 donation. And thank you, AJ, as well, for that massive support and also helping to keep the channel running with that huge support right there. He said, I just started listening, and what a breath of fresh air to have a pure news broadcast and just news, facts without political bias or agenda, and keep up the good work.
I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel, AJ Leonhardt. We try our best to make sure that it is just the news. We skip the politics and the commentary and just get right into the news. I got to thank you so much for the support and encouraging us to keep up the great work, because we try our best to be on here every single night, keeping it up. And it is a great thing to know that a lot of people are enjoying this channel. Right now, there's 33,000 people here live, and we love to know that we are one of the forefront faces of news throughout the entirety of the internet at this point. No holds barred. I don't really think there's many other news channels out there that are getting up to this height, except for a few. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next one here. Also, by the way, I am scanning for more breaking news as we're going through these super chats. So rest assured, folks, we're not just simply tuning out and not checking. We are right now. And in fact, when I'm quiet, I'm not saying anything. I am scanning every source I've got. So to report on a little bit of news I'm getting right now, I am hearing from the Israeli media sources that there is preliminary information about an army attack on Tabriz and Shiraz inside of Iran. So we're being told an army attack. I'm not sure if they're referring to the Air Force. I would assume they're referring to the Air Force, but they said army attack. So, of course, there's a little bit of ambiguity there, but I would imagine it's simply a mistype and they meant Air Force. So Tabriz and Shiraz is the new targets.
And so we'll be waiting to see further developments and information coming out from those cities at the moment of Tabriz and Shiraz. But it does appear that there are new Israeli attacks that have now expanded into those areas at the moment, and it appears that the Israelis are attempting to hit targets within that area. We do not know what targets are being hit yet, and we also do not know what they mean by an army attack, because an army attack would suggest that there are now forces on the ground, which we are not entirely sure if there are forces on the ground or not. An Israeli airborne being dropped off inside of Iran without really any ability to exfiltrate them is highly unlikely, as those forces would eventually have to be relieved. They are not entirely self-sufficient, and they eventually would run out of ammunition, most likely in a short amount of time, especially considering that the Iranian military, beyond its air defense and ballistic missile capabilities, is still largely intact from what we know. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can at the moment, but that seems to be a very interesting development that we've been able to hear of right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we are on to the next one.
Also, I see some people mentioning that maybe the citizens are rising up. I would believe that would not be the case, because they specifically said a military army attack. So I would assume that's not civilians doing that. Also, someone else had mentioned in the chat as well that maybe it means special forces. Possibly that is a possibility, but I would say most likely it's probably just another Air Force attack, and it was simply a mistype or a misreporting by those media sources. So we'll have to wait and see, because, of course, that ambiguity does create some concerns about, are there forces on the ground? Are there Air Force assets attacking? It's just really hard to tell based on that wording. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here. This one is going to go to none other than Erling Gruel, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Erling, for that support as well. He said, I just turned 77 yesterday, and also happy belated birthday to you. He said, I thought I'd send you some cash for the pizza fund, and you guys aren't just a news show. You're a phenomenon of the future. And, thank you for that. He said, surpassing the mainstream news, and take one from the chat.
I got to thank you for the massively kind words, Erling Gruel, and also a belated happy birthday to you. I wish we could have told you happy birthday yesterday when you were 77. But beyond that, I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and supporting the pizza fund a day after your birthday, because it helps us to stay on air and to make sure to keep covering news like this, which not really a lot of people get to do. We're in a very special kind of position, especially at our age, to be able to cover this kind of news. And we are massively thanks for folks like you, Erling Gruel, who have been around for a very long time here, enjoying this channel and supporting it, so that way we can make our news operations possible. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from Khan LSA. And thank you, Khan, as well, for that generous $50 support. He said, Israel is now stomping Iran into the dirt. And yes, Iran fired everything they had in the first week of war. And that ship has sailed. And Israel has complete air superiority over Iran now. And why is the United States getting involved in this when Israel is easily winning?
And I thank you for the support, and that seems to largely be the case, that the Israelis are on the winning side. They're still taking hits here and there, but they still largely are on the winning side at this point, even on their own, which I think should have shown a lot of people that the United States was really overestimating what Iran was capable of, and may have been listening to possible Iranian propaganda to believe that they would have ever been capable of doing much of anything. But the reason why the United States is possibly getting involved is because there are some targets that cannot be hit or destroyed without the U.S. getting in there and doing it themselves. One of them is the Fordow nuclear facility, or the Fordow uranium enrichment plant, as it's really called. That facility appears to be so far underground that it is not possible for a current Israeli ordnance to be able to really hit it and knock it out. And for that reason, while a lot of the surface facilities have been destroyed, the Israelis are needing a little bit of help with destroying the underground facility that actually is responsible for the uranium enrichment. And because of that, the United States would largely have to get involved. Some people have been talking about possibly just giving the Israelis a GBU-51, which is the MOP, which is a specialized kind of a bomb. Actually, it's the GBU-57, correction, folks. This is a specialized kind of a bunker-busting bomb, but from what we can tell, it cannot be carried by any aircraft that are currently in Israeli service, and largely could only be carried by the B-2 Spirit. So for that reason, or the B-52 for the large part, we can't actually see a test picture of the B-52 dropping a MOP. That's actually where this picture comes from, right up here. But beyond that, it does appear that a larger bomber would have to be used, and given that, it most likely would be a B-2 Spirit dropping this MOP. The Israelis do not have a B-2 Spirit to use, and we are the only country in the world that has a bomber large enough or capable enough at the moment to be able to try and drop off this kind of a bomb onto the Fordow site, and most likely onto every other site as well, just to ensure that they were completely destroyed, such as the Natanz site, which could probably also use a MOP as well. But beyond that, that seems to be the situation at the moment, and why the United States would possibly get involved. And it also appears that we would possibly get involved because we have the naval and air assets to ensure that the Iranians never close off the Strait of Hormuz and mine its entrance to stop any passage in and out of the Persian Gulf, and to block off a lot of petroleum and oil exports and imports. Those two things seem to be the main reasons why the United States would get involved in the conflict, at least from what we can tell right now. So a big thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And also, funnily enough, the GBU-57 is called the MOP because MOP stands for Massive Ordnance Penetrator. So it does appear that that actually is a technical name, which is a little bit interesting to me because I thought that the MOP designation may have been something along the joke, but the Moab is the mother of all bombs, and that's what Moab is an abbreviation for. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, Matthew, really quickly, just to make sure that we let everyone know, are we looking for more breaking news, and do we have anything happening so far?
All right. So right now we do have a very nice, concise update here from Ian Ellis on Twitter. He did post basically a summary of which U.S. Navy ships are deployed to the Middle East and Europe right now, and also a general, I guess, force posture of the Navy in the Middle East, if you want to take a look.
And we can see right here that there is a significant force deployment of U.S. Navy vessels within the area. We can see that within the CENTCOM area of operations, it does appear that the USS Carl Vinson Strike Group is available and on standby at this moment for any operations that would be involved in the future. It appears that we are able to see at least that the entirely consisted, at least of the surface combatants, of nothing but the Carl Vinson Strike Group, as the Carl Vinson is in theater along with the USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, the USS Milius, the USS Sterrett, the USS Ralph Johnson, and the USS Wayne E. Mayer, which are all Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers. We can also see some fleet auxiliaries are present as well, along with the USS Canberra, which is an Independence-class littoral combat ship, and we can also see the USS Georgia, which is a ballistic missile submarine, is also in CENTCOM's area of operation as well, along with what appears to be 4 U.S. minesweepers or Coast Guard cutters. We're not entirely sure which those are. We can also see that within the Red Sea, the USS Forrest Sherman and the USS, let's see, that is a very hard one to read right there. Truckter? The USS Tucker is in the Red Sea at the moment. It's going around laughing, asking why we're bombing Iran. We can also see that there are 3 Arleigh Burkes present in the Eastern Mediterranean as well. The actual namesake, the USS Arleigh Burke, the USS The Sullivans, and the USS Thomas Hudner are also in the Mediterranean as well, and most likely would be making up any part of the Israeli air defense that would use U.S.-based interceptor missiles. We can also see that there are 3 fleet auxiliaries in the Mediterranean as well. Meanwhile, near to the area of the Strait of Gibraltar, we can also see the USS Oscar Olson and the USS Paul Ignatius are also in that area as well. The USS Delaware is somewhere around the United Kingdom, a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, and the USS Mount Whitney, which appears to be some sort of a command or surveillance vessel, is also somewhere in the Baltic, most likely as a part of Operation Sentry, which has been an ongoing NATO operation to find and stop any acts of Russian sabotage which are being conducted within that area. So it does appear that there are some naval assets within the area, not a wildly large amount, mind you all. We can only count that there are about, let's see, 8 Arleigh Burke class destroyers, 1 Ticonderoga class cruiser, and 1 aircraft carrier currently on station at the moment, or at least somewhere in the general vicinity. The USS Nimitz is on its way, along with its carrier strike group, and let me go really quickly try and pull y'all some information of the Nimitz carrier strike group and see if they listed off the number of ships that are involved in that strike group at the moment. And so it appears that Strike Group 11 is the Nimitz Strike Group. And let's see if we can find... So other units currently assigned to the group include the cruisers USS Lake Erie and USS Princeton. So it does appear that the Nimitz is a little bit heavier in cruiser firepower instead of destroyers, as it actually has 2 Ticonderoga class cruisers as a part of its strike group instead of just the 1 that we're finding inside of the Carl Vinson strike group. Let me see really quickly if we can get any other information about the vessels that are currently involved with the Nimitz while it's on its current deployment. So let me see if we can get that information right now. It doesn't appear that they have any information, at least at the moment, about their current deployment on Wikipedia. This information usually would be on the Navy website, as we were able to find information about this in the past, but it doesn't appear that I'll be able to find y'all any information right now, rather than the fact that the Nimitz does have 2 Ticonderoga class cruisers as a part of its strike group, meaning that the number will be bolstered, at least in CENTCOM's area of operations, by 1 additional Nimitz class carrier, along with 2 additional Ticonderoga class cruisers at a minimum. We'd most likely assume that there was at least 3 to 4 Arleigh Burkes following along, which would add about another 100% worth of Arleigh Burke class destroyers that would be in CENTCOM's area of operations at this very moment in time. So with that, I hope we are able to give you all a little bit of an update on the U.S. naval disposition within the area and what we are currently looking at right now as a result of that. But with that, while we keep looking at this infographic here, which is very nice, and I got to give a big shout out to Ian Ellis for making such a nice infographic here, and also IAJ Media, who is also involved in this as well, we are going to be moving on into a couple of more questions as we wait for more news to develop.
All right. So also, by the way, we do have another piece of news that just came out right now. We are hearing from Iraqi government officials. Remember, Iraq has sort of been drug into the situation yet again, like they always are. And it's kind of like an unwilling participant at this point. So the Iraqi government officials are telling the Iraqi newspapers that they believe Israel is intentionally trying to involve Iraq in the war as part of their plan to, quote unquote, redraw the Middle East. And the government officials told Al-Mada that previously planned Israeli strikes on Iraq were halted by the United States. Now, of course, that is the Iraqi government's claim. Take it with a grain of salt. We have not gotten confirmation of that, but currently that is what they're saying. So it sounds like Iraq is protesting Israel's actions and saying that they're trying to drag them in against their will.
And that is a very interesting thing to hear, considering that the Republic of Iraq has had a very checkered past, at least recently, and is still a fairly unstable country. It's not really that the Israelis are trying to drag them into the war, it's that the Iraq is still a terrorist hotbed, even in the present day. So a little bit interesting for them to make a statement like that, and once again showing us that the Iraqis are still largely trying to peace out and remain uninvolved, at least for now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Jordi Faravanalaroven, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Jordi, for that generous support as well. He said, keep up the great work, LSA, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much, Jordy Farrow Van Loroven, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you massively for enjoying our hard work and supporting it so that way it can continue to be possible. Folks like you make this thing possible and help us to make this thing a reality, and we are massively thankful and appreciative for that. So massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And that live chat question is going to go to Heather Fitzgibbon, who said, "Are the roads from Tehran still clogged leaving the city?" And, that is a good question. I did see a video earlier showing the streets of downtown Tehran. It was like a ghost town. There was nobody out. It was completely empty and really, honestly, quite spooky. I'm not sure if we have that video available to show right this second. It is on our Twitter profile, probably pretty far down at this point. But the streets of Tehran are oddly empty at this very moment. Now, we'll check Google Maps in just a minute to see what the actual live traffic footage says about the area, but it's quite bare right now. And also, Enforcer, if you scroll down a little bit further, you should be able to see maybe a video showing downtown Tehran somewhere in here. There it was. Go back up. Go back up. You were almost on it. Go back up another one. Another one.
Right here?
Right here. Yes, this is it.
Well, let's take a little gander at this, folks. We're going to be muting that.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need that at all. I don't know what that was even. We can see some sort of a large monument there.
And this is the streets of Tehran, allegedly, apparently very recently, within like the last day or so.
It seems to be a little quiet out there. It seems like the part of the movie where they roll like the opening credits before the movie actually begins. It's kind of like the beginning.
Also, Enforcer, real quick, let's pause this video and let's go look at the Google map real quick and see if we can find the traffic data. It should auto-populate on Google Maps there around Tehran, at least on the roadways, if you have traffic selected.
Oh, look, the main interstate out of Tehran's finally empty. Oh, actually, there's some traffic jams up here. So it looks like the large bulk of the Tehranians have finally made it up to Kazvin, if I'm able to pronounce that correctly. And there's a major traffic jam happening up here on the interstate. But the bulk of it has actually moved out of Tehran. And we also aren't getting a lot of traffic data from the city of Tehran either. A lot amount of the streets just appear to be closed. Or something along those lines. Actually, as we zoom in, yeah, actually it appears there's a lot of roadblocks or something along those lines that have been made. As a matter of fact, we can actually find where that video was filmed at the Azadi Tower, which is this structure right here.
Interesting. Also, I see people saying the population of Tehran being almost 10 million people. I really doubt that 10 million people have left by road. I really doubt that. I think a lot of people tried to flee, and a lot of people probably decided to stay and simply go into hiding. That's my assumption. And people just simply learn to stay off the streets, stay out of the roads, and stay hidden as much as possible and hope that bombs don't fall into their house. I think that's currently what they're trying to do right now. But also, by the way, we did get an evacuation warning that Israel did publish for a district in Tehran, which is apparently near the airport, because they're planning on doing some strikes around that area coming up very soon. So I think people are just learning to stay inside. That's pretty much the end result.
Pretty much shelter in place and wait for the situation to pass over. And we see him still driving around this tower. So he's driving around it for the second time. And now he finally gets away from the tower. And now it appears that he's in another area of Tehran. And there is some road traffic here. Not a wildly large amount, but there still is some. And also someone said, this is why you don't live in major cities. Well, generally, major cities aren't controlled by an extremist Islamic government that's begging to get bombed. So usually this isn't much of an issue, is having a slight chance of bomb falls throughout the course of the day and a chance of hell. Like that usually isn't something that happens often in most major cities. I mean, I can tell you all, I've been to Los Angeles, and the only thing I saw around there was some tweakers. So generally, that's just what you get in a big city. It's nothing like this. But nevertheless, it does appear that the city of Tehran largely has been emptied out, at least around the area of the, I believe this is the Mehrabad International Airport, where this video was largely filmed. And we can also see that there appears to be road closures in some of these areas as well, possibly making road traffic a little bit more difficult to get around, at least for the moment. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Also, the city is a home to about 9 million people or so, which is a very large number of people. It's actually as large as the London metropolitan area. And we also have some more news at the moment. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we do have some breaking news right now. So we're hearing that Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba is also calling for the prevention of Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, which, in other words, that is endorsing Israel's current actions against Iran. So Japan appears to be on Israel's side here and giving public endorsement to these current actions being taken right now inside of Iran. So also very interested to hear that Japan is now weighed in. Also, Enforcer, we have an image here I'm a little bit skeptical about, to be honest, allegedly showing it what appears to be a silhouette of a B-2 stealth bomber in the sky. But I'm kind of skeptical about this. They did not say the location. They did not say where its destination was going. So what do you make of that?
This could be anywhere, and this picture could be from any point in time. The
That's what
caption
I'm
just
thinking.
says, the stealth plane, the singular one, there's only one that exists in the world, currently flying somewhere, its destination unknown. So, it could literally be anything. So I'm not really putting a lot of faith into this picture, to be entirely honest. It could be
I think
anything.
the photo might have been published. I'm not sure if it's real or not. By the way, I would lean toward the side of it's probably. I'm very skeptical about it, to say the least. I probably wouldn't put much stock into it. But I think these photos are being spurred by the fact that there was two B-2 bombers in the air. We had heard over high frequency radio at some point earlier in the day that two B-2s were airborne, but we did not know where, and we did not know if they were actually heading somewhere. And then we heard clarifications from officials that said that they were doing simply training runs. So it could be a cover for action. It could be legitimate training runs. It's just kind of hard to tell. But there were some B-2s in the air earlier doing something that we're really not sure what they were doing.
We're not entirely sure what they were doing, but this picture may have been spurned from that, like you're saying. I'd have to largely agree with you there. And so with that, I hope we were able to speak on that somewhat well, but I don't really know what that aircraft is doing, where it's going, or why. And so with that, in the meantime, we are on to the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to Hal Rose. You put in a $33 donation, and thank you very much, Hal, as well, for that support. He said, Enforcer Matt, any way you can do short war videos on news from Ukraine and do this stuff in a live show, and I'm showing 31,000 viewers right now, and keep it up. And also, Hal, we can do videos on Ukraine. And of course, we have not forgotten about Ukraine. We're simply trying to prioritize this massive news in the Middle East right this second. But there are still things happening in Ukraine. Granted, the things that are happening right now are a bit on the, I guess you could say, the low end of the news scale right now. We are seeing some attacks in Kyiv, and we're also seeing some attacks by Ukraine on some infrastructure inside of Russia, but nothing abnormal, as in like what we're seeing right now in the Middle East. So we could do a catch up on that at some point. Now, I will say we'll probably have to save the catch up until maybe a day or two down the road, because if the USA gets involved in the situation in the Middle East, that is going to delay the Ukraine coverage a little bit further, because that's going to be a huge escalation to the point where we will have to cover that live as it's happening, because that'll be so huge we can't ignore it. So we could. That is a good idea. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support, and I do want to point out to a lot of our viewers here who are heavily invested in the Ukraine war that we are not forgetting or just dropping Ukraine war coverage. This isn't that kind of a channel where, we just go and follow the trending thing and then just forget about what we cover. We are a world news channel, and this is a significant ongoing global development daily that's going on in Eastern Europe. The issue is, though, is that what's going on in the Middle East right now, in every single way, in pertinence and importance and scale, is beating out what's going on in Ukraine pretty much daily at this point. I don't mean to say that to just say Ukraine does not matter. Ukraine's quite an important ongoing conflict, and it's incredibly important because it's a war on the doorstep of the largest economic partner, the European Union, that the United States is aligned with, or largely aligns with the United States. And so for that reason, we do want to cover it. The thing is, though, is that much like Matthew's saying, I've been making sure to try and keep up to date with it. It's just that we're not putting down any of the markers on the map, at least for now, to make sure that we clear it up for everything going on down here in the Middle East. But from what we can see right now that's going on up in Ukraine, it appears that Kyiv has been hit several times over the past few days by some significant Russian missile attacks. We've also been able to see that the battles of Pokrovsk and Toretsk have been going on largely as normal. The Ukrainians are holding their defensive positions there and are not really allowing the Russians to advance, and the Russians are pretty much just running headlong into a meat grinder at the moment. And we've also been able to see that the Ukrainians have attacked and hit some infrastructure of the Russians throughout the Russian Federation. But beyond that, it's nothing wildly major. It's nothing huge at the moment. Like, for example, we would definitely break from this coverage if the Ukrainians went and conducted Operation Spiderweb 2.0 and knocked out about 40 of Russia's bombers again, because that sort of a development is absolutely massive. But at the moment, we're not seeing any major or massive developments coming out of the Ukraine war. There's still big things happening there, but it isn't just wildly massive to the point that it's going to break us away from this, because y'all do have to remember that we cover anything major going on in any given day. Like when we saw the India-Pakistan war kicked off for a short while, we immediately broke from Ukraine war coverage and pretty much covered that exclusively until it ended, because we always want to make sure, since we're a global war news channel, to cover all of the major global news developments that are happening at any given point in time. And considering that this is historic and it's going to be happening once and never again, and the Ukraine war has been going on for 1,210 days, we do want to make sure that we are giving enough airtime to major breaking developments like these, instead of largely ignoring this and then just covering Ukraine exclusively, because right now with the volume of news that we're getting as well, we either have to pick one or the other. We have to pick covering Ukraine, or we have to pick covering the Middle East. And right now, considering that this is a major developing situation that is rapidly shifting every single day, we're wanting to make sure to cover this, because if we don't cover it, then we just miss out on a lot of major developments that are happening every single day right now in this area. While with Ukraine, we could end up not covering the news there for about a week at this point, and then circle back, and we still would be able to pretty much cover the highlights of that entire week of the major news developments and the actions that were happening in that conflict so far. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But I hope that also explains a little bit as to why we haven't been able to cover that much lately, and we've pretty much been glued into the Middle East, at least at this point. But I do thank you so much once again for support, Halrose, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Ron Anderson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Ron, as well, for that $20 support. He said, I applaud you both, and time to add a little to your coffee fund again. And y'all were putting in a lot of hours. And I tell you what, Ron, we have been putting in hours like crazy. I saw someone saying that we were on some sort of substance in the chat just a minute ago. I'm actually on no coffee. I've had no coffee the entire time this has been going on. I've been running purely on adrenaline at this point, and also just wildly shocked by the events that are breaking out right now. That's literally what's keeping me going, is how crazy these events are. And I want to make sure that we're here to cover it along with the enforcers. So that's what's keeping me going. I actually cannot drink coffee at the moment for some health reasons. So I am purely just totally natural, no coffee right now, no nothing. I'm just operating. But enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to agree. I actually haven't had a drop of coffee in about the past 6 days. And I also haven't had any headaches either. So I've been kind of a little bit blessed by that one. But I do thank you for the support. And I also thank you for supporting the coffee fund, because once we get back to our normal coverage, we will need it, because the normal coverage happens way later in the night. And also it goes on for a good while as well, about 3.5 hours every single night. So I got to massively thank you so much once again for support and appreciating the work we're doing here on this channel, because we are honored to do it. And we love to know that we get to cover the news for all of the folks out there in the live chat right now, and also in our viewership right now, because we have 30.5 thousand people here live at the moment right now. So big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than a Arar983, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, I love watching the major positive history unfold, and thanks for sharing all this info. Slava Ukraine and Shalom, Israeli friends. And also, by the way, I must admit real quick that it is a very positive history. Like, I know obviously a war starting, to most people, they're like, that's terrible. And obviously war is not good. But at the same time, though, the people of Iran are basically being held hostage right now by an extremist regime. There are a lot of people in Iran that want to have a free Iranian country. That's what they want. And they are so close to having it. Like the people in Iran, if they give the U.S. a little bit of help and domestically inside of Iran, I think the U.S. can actually free them from the Ayatollah and his very, very oppressive regime. And they can can have a free country like they used to have way back in the day, many decades ago. So the Iranians do have hope at this point, and I think with a little bit of help for the U.S. government from the Iranian people, I think we can make that definitely happen. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I'd have to agree. I think that it certainly can happen. And that's why we're trying to be on air as much as we can and covering these major significant events as they're happening live, is because this is a major historical event. This is the first time ever, mind you all, that we've actually seen a nuclear power or a attempted nuclear power being conventionally disarmed by another country. We've never seen anything like this before. So it's really a crazy thing to see at the moment that is the case. It's something that we'll never see again. And so I got to thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And hopefully we'll be able to see that the Iranian people are finally freed from this extremist regime that's been in charge for nearly 50 years at this point. And so with that, a massive thanks once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to Old Warrior, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, as well, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And he said, I should have been more detailed yesterday. China ordered the evac of its people from Tehran, and Iranians trying to get into Pakistan found the border closed. And will Pakistan open the borders to fleeing Chinese?
I'm not really sure. That's actually a good question. Pakistan probably will, considering that Pakistan has a significant relationship with the People's Republic of China in the present day. They most likely would make special exceptions and only open a limited border checkpoint, maybe one, to allow for the entrance of Chinese nationals from Iran. But we don't really know at the moment. I would say that that's a decent certainty, though, considering the relationship that Pakistan has with China in the present day. So a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that question well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to be a $20 support from none other than, guess who? It goes to Snotty. And Snotty said, I appreciate everything you guys do.
Hey, and thank you for the support, Snotty, and we are happy to know that you appreciate what we do, because we try our best to make sure that it is some of the greatest news that is out there, and hopefully we were able to meet that mark tonight, and we're still hopefully meeting that whenever we get news again. And I do once again want to point out to folks who are coming in here, we are still waiting for any kind of real news developments to be coming out of the region right now. There's not really a lot going on. There appears to be a little bit of a lull at the moment, so with that in mind, we're just continuing to answer questions in the downtime that we have. So I hope that everyone does remain patient. I also thank you all for y'all's patience, because unfortunately, while we would also love to have news to cover, we cannot really force the world to work on our timetable or all of y'all's timetable. We kind of have to wait for them to do their own thing. So we're just kind of having to sit around and wait at the moment. But a big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that has addressed it incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we do have a little bit of breaking news happening right this second. We are getting reports, some very early reports, of more strikes happening right now in the Iranian capital of Tehran. We do not have video footage of that event right now, but we are hearing, at least from eyewitnesses and also reports on Twitter, that apparently there are strikes being heard in Tehran. Also, it looks like the IRGC has released footage of them launching their EMOD ballistic missiles toward Israel during tonight's attack. And I will have to get hearing aids now because my ears are officially blown to smithereens. But let's hear that video.
Let's take a listen to it. It's a little loud right there. Their footage could have been a little bit better. But those are the end
I
of
guess
the
their
clips.
I guess their film budget took a hit too because those cameras were almost like the Russian equivalent of a potato camera. That was very bad.
Dude, that was the camera equivalent of a lot of car. That was a really rough camera that they were filming that on. But it does appear that we were able to finally get some on the ground footage of those missile launches. A large amount of those were intercepted at least a little bit earlier today. So very interesting to know. But with that, I hope we were able to address that well. And with that, while we had that little bit of news to cover and a little bit of video to show y'all, we are going to be on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Sherry Taylor, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Sherry, for that support. And we do appreciate that. And they threw in a super sticker saying #1. And we do appreciate that very much, Sherry. And thank you very much for helping to support our channel and keep our work on the air. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you, Sherry. Thank you for helping our channel to stay on air, and thank you for saying that we are #1. We try our best to be, and we hope that we are meeting that criteria tonight. So massive thanks once again. And we're on to that next one.
And we have a $20 super chat from Jocelyn White, who's a longtime channel legend. And Josh said, I appreciate the overtime and thank you both for all this hard work.
And thank you so much for appreciating the overtime, and thank you for your support. And so with that, hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jody Mandalayas, who's also a longtime channel viewer, who puts in a 20 and says, thank you for keeping us up to date and I appreciate you guys.
And thank you so much for enjoying us keeping you up to date, because we are very honored to know that we are able to do such a thing for all of y'all. So a massive thanks once again, and we're on to that next one.
And a big shout out to Gregory Spurlock, who threw in a 20, and also Military Cyborg, who threw in a 20 as well, and said, we appreciate y'all, and we appreciate you, Gregory and Military Cyborg, for that support as well. And we also had a 20 from Daniel Briscoe, and he said, I forgot to send a message, and Yisrael Chai, and Slava Ukraine, and let's go LSA, and thank you to the Brothers Enforcers for keeping us up to date.
I got to thank y'all for enjoying us, keeping y'all up to date, and I got to thank you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't have been able to keep it rolling into the present day, and we are massively appreciative to all of y'all for helping us to be able to make it to this point. So big thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Paul Weekly, and he said, because use of your team's awesomeness.
Hey, and thank you so much for support, Paul Weekly, and thank you for enjoying our team's awesomeness, because you're not going to believe it, but it's just Matthew and me, both of the hosts that are on air. We are all that exists behind the scenes. There are no additional workers or staff to help us out to make this whole thing possible. We have to do it all, and we have to do it all on air every single night. So a big thanks to you so much once again, and thank you for enjoying it and supporting it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 20 from Old Buff Nav, and he said, as expected, great reporting. And also, have you seen or heard any use of lasers during this conflict?
We have not seen any use of directed energy weapons throughout the entirety of the conflict so far. It appears that those have been generally a miss at the moment, and we are still waiting for any additional information or developments on the Iron Beam or any other kind of directed energy weapon being used so far. So I hope that addresses that the best we can, and with that, we are on to the next one. Massive thanks to you once again.
All right, and also, by the way, let's do some looking real quick, because I'm seeing people say that are seeing some takeoffs from some Air Force bases here in the United States, specifically Maxwell, which happens to be in Alabama, where we're located. We're not located in Montgomery, by the way. We're located in Birmingham, in the central part of the state, but we used to live in Montgomery, so I'm very familiar with Maxwell. So let's take a look at Flight Radar 24 and see if we can spot any aircraft taking off from Maxwell Air Force Base, and see what we can spot leaving that area if they are squawking on Flight Radar.
And so let's see if we can find it really quickly. And let's see here. Montgomery, Alabama. There's Maxwell. These appear to be regional flights. But I'm not seeing any military flights. At least
Supposed to be primarily commercial running around that area of Alabama right now. Not really seeing anything military related here, just sort of scanning around. They have a particular icon on them usually, and I'm not really seeing that right off the bat. So maybe there was some activity here, but if there was, it's probably moved on out of the state at this point, probably headed out, probably up toward the East Coast.
Let's see here. I'm trying to look around and see if we can find any sort of particular special icon. Not really seeing any at the moment. And let's see. Nah, not really seeing any right now. Let's see what the most tracked aircraft are right now. Huh. Not really seeing any at all. So it appears that there may be no air activity, at least within this area of the United States, that has any military air traffic involved in it. But let's take a little bit of a look around, say, maybe the Midwest, and possibly there is some military aircraft activity happening out here. It's possible. It's not unlikely. That is a DHL flight. That is not a military flight. I'm not really seeing any at the moment, at least for now. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, the best we can. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from John Schenk. And John Schenk said, "Enjoy you when I get to watch. Keep up the good work." And I got to thank you so much for the support, John Schenk, and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, before we move on to the next one, I actually saw someone give a great idea. It was, as a matter of fact, Dan Metcalf, who said, "Select filter at the bottom and select military only." And so let's see if we can go. Actually, let's see here. We want just the military ones. Oh, yes. We have to have a premium account. Or an account at all to be able to do that. And unfortunately, we do not have an account, and I wouldn't be able to make one on air, at least at the moment, due to a possible information leak happening as a result of that. I do thank you incredibly for suggesting that. It's just that unfortunately we probably would not be able to do that at the moment. And we will see. We will give it a try here in a little bit. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for the suggestion and the idea there. That was a very good idea. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Chris's mom. And Chris's mom said, "Can you elaborate about Russia using cluster munition bombs on civilian neighborhoods in Kyiv last night? I don't want this to be overlooked." Yes, as a matter of fact, the Russian Federation did use cluster bombs over residential neighborhoods in the capital city of Kyiv overnight inside of Ukraine. And it does appear that the Russian Federation was specifically doing this to try and conduct an act of terror against the Ukrainian citizenry and also inflict a high amount of casualties on the Ukrainian civilian populations even after they left their houses once the air raid was over last night. Technically, using cluster munitions of any kind over a populated area filled with civilians is a war crime, or really using them within populated areas at all is generally a war crime, because cleaning up the unused or undetonated cluster bombs on the ground is an incredibly strenuous sort of a process, and those bomblets being inside of urban areas makes it practically next to impossible to be able to clear them all out. So it actually is a very unfortunate thing to hear about, and once again is showing that the Russian Federation has pretty much moved into acts of terror in its own form in full broad daylight now against the state of Ukraine to try and force some sort of an end to the conflict, considering that the Russian Federation economically is getting close to being on its last legs, at least for now. And so I hope that does address that well, Chris's mom. Great question, by the way, and thank you for bringing up a little bit about Ukraine that we could talk about and mention here, because we did hear about that, and I did see that. It's just that unfortunately, we have not been able to cover it, at least on stream recently. But a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Illenium. And Illenium threw in a 50 Canadian and said, "Thanks for mentioning how Iranians feel. This is sad for both sides. We hate war and have nothing against other countries. Pray for our loved ones." And I thank you so much for the support, Illenium, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to agree. I'd have to say that it's very unfortunate that a lot of the Iranian people have to live under such a regime that we're seeing right now in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And hopefully we'll be able to see that eventually that regime ceases to exist and is changed out for another one that hopefully will be a little bit better for the Iranian people throughout the future. I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So huge thanks to you once again. And also, really quickly, I'm also going to get a $5 super chat really quickly from Barry Young. And Barry Young said, "What you guys eating today? Wish I could send you some of my amazing vegetarian bean barley soup." And my control room just died. One second, folks. Let me make sure to get that back up. And really quickly, let's see. I wish I could send you some of my amazing vegetarian bean barley soup with homemade sourdough bread toasted. And I gotta thank you so much for support, Barry Young. We actually had a mix of food today. Matthew had chicken and rice, and I personally had, what was it? It was crab rangoons, which I never had before until today, and those were incredibly delicious, and I really liked them a great deal. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Barry Young, and thank you once again for asking. That was very nice of you. We also have a $5 $5 super chat from Ryan Sykes. And Ryan Sykes said, look at the most tracked flight on flight radar, order 1, then go east. There's many military helicopters all over the coast. I thank you for the support, Ryan Sykes. Military helicopters really are not of any significance because those helicopters are pretty much stuck on the East Coast. The transport aircraft would be what's important, as the transport aircraft would be able to load the fuselages and rotors of those helicopters and then take them over into the Middle East if necessary. I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that the best I can. I also see that a lot of people are talking about crab rangoons, and I didn't know that they were that good. It's like crab meat and butter inside of some sort of a pastry. It's incredibly good. It's wildly good. I actually did not know how good those were until I had one today, and I was telling Matthew in my own words, "On God, this thing be bussin' for real, for real." And he was very intrigued by them. Unfortunately, did not get to try them though. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, at least at the moment, and we will be seeing about getting some further questions here in a moment. But Matthew has just returned. And Matthew, I want to let you know that every single super chat that's come in while you've been gone, including the $5 super chats, has been addressed. So you do not have to worry about getting those and putting them in the spreadsheet to be addressed later. They've all been addressed at the moment. Also, by the way, Matthew, have we had any more good news coming out in the meantime?
So I was doing a quick scan here to find any more breaking news that's happening at the very moment right here. And we are seeing a little bit of breaking news coming out, but nothing really crazy. It's more like some stats we're getting right now. So right now we are hearing that it's being reported that the death toll in Iran from Israeli strikes rises to 585. That's 585 deceased, and also 1,326 injured, according to our recent reporting that we're getting right now from AZ Intel on Twitter. So unfortunately, there does appear to be a rising death toll here. We're not told if this is civilian casualties or death toll, or if maybe it's from the military. We're really not sure at the moment. So we'll kind of have to just wait for more clarification on that to figure it out. But that is the current information.
And we'll have to see if we can get any more corroboration or details about what this death toll includes. It most likely includes a lot of government officials, but it may also include civilians as well, which would be rather unfortunate. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, or at least covers any of the breaking news developments that we have right now. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to be a $20 support from the Elevator Man, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Elevator Man, for that $20 support. And he said, thank you. And also, while we're at it, big shout out to Carlos Santiago for putting in a 20 also and not leaving a comment. But thank you very much, Elevator Man and Carlos, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thanks to both of y'all for enjoying this channel and supporting it, because y'all are helping this channel to keep on running and making it possible. So a massive thanks once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have another $20 support. This time it goes to Charles Intel, who puts in that 20. He said, could Iran be a practice run for Russia next?
I wouldn't really know in exactly what way it would be a practice run, so I'd largely say no, at least in my opinion at the moment. But still, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep it running. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Michelle M, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you, Michelle, for that generous support as well. And Michelle said, thank you for the awesome news source. And I have a question regarding nukes. Won't they take themselves and the entire Middle East out by doing that?
Generally not. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a fairly large country, and nuclear weaponry does not have a massively large spread. For that reason, you can actually land a nuclear weapon inside of Israel in a place like Tel Aviv. I'd end up pretty much wiping out Tel Aviv, the city, along with a decent part of the West Bank, at least in some sort of a circular sort of a pattern around the area. But you would not end up wiping out the entirety of the Middle East. Also, nuclear retaliation is only poised for the countries that fired off nuclear weaponry, meaning that the remainder of the countries in the Middle East would probably be completely immune to any kind of attacks or damage as nuclear retaliation due to the initial Iranian nuclear attack. So the answer to that is generally no. Actually, nuclear exchange could happen between the two, and it would be generally limited, at least in between the two countries alone, and not really extending elsewhere. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Tim W. And thank you very much, Tim, as well. He said, how many Bombcat skid steers has Iran lost?
We have not heard at the moment. I would assume that it's probably been at least a few, maybe 3 or 4 of them over the past few days. And so with that, I thank you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is a $20 support from James Ellington, who puts in a 20. He said, "How hard did you laugh when the IAF interrupted the Iran TV news broadcast the other night?"
Oh, I laugh pretty hard. We're trying not to laugh too much on air. We realize that some people may not like it if we joke around too much, because funnily enough, every time we crack a joke, we actually end up losing several hundred live viewers every single time. So whenever we make a joke, it has to be a little bit more strategic at this point, than just, cracking jokes like we sometimes would on all of our shows all the time. But as far as we can tell, that was pretty damn funny. I cannot lie. I was laughing at that when I saw it, because you got this woman talking about the destruction of Israel and the Greater West and the evil infidels for the large part. And then as soon as she was saying that, a bomb hit the building, and she immediately dropped that, got up, and then just ran away. It's like, well, it's like, I guess that's just how it happens, I suppose. But I hope that does address it the best I can. I still got a pretty good laugh out of it, but I tried to deliver it as dryly as I could. At least from what we were doing with our news coverage last night and on the video yesterday. And it seems like that actually got a more comical sort of reaction to it than actually trying to crack a joke on it and just treating it like it was actual news. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that I've addressed that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Terry Haggard, and Terry said, "Our assets are probably headed over to make sure no crazy groups like Pakistan or China are going to establish a government, and Iranian officers have already contacted the Crown Prince."
And that's very interesting to hear. I thank you for sharing that. And I would have to say that uh, I would generally not assume that Pakistan or China is going to be setting up a government in Iran. That generally is not what allies do. Allies kind of sit back and just let whatever happen happen. But that might be a possibility, possibly. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this possible. And we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Hackneys and Rhinelanders, who just threw in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Hackneys, for that support, a massive support. And they said, "I learned in my Iranian security and diplomacy course when Khomeini, the predecessor of Khomeini, was exiled in Iraq, Saddam Hussein gave the Shah the opportunity to assassinate him. And the Shah said no, and Khomeini went to Paris." And also incredible work in LSA.
That's very interesting to hear. I actually did not know about that before. I do know the general developments of the Islamic Republic of Iran and also the Kingdom of Persia, which preceded it. But I actually do not know the actual story or the specific details of Ali Khamenei or Khomeini, who came before him. That's incredibly interesting to hear, and I do thank you for the support and sharing that story with us, and also helping this channel to keep on running and teaching us something new today. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, I see a lot of people talking about the mix of humor or no humor on shows. I generally say that at least for now, we want to keep it as serious as possible, because it allows for us to actually focus on the meat or details of what we're covering. But in general, I'm not a bleeding heart. Like, there's some bleeding hearts out there. I saw like 1 or 2 of them pop up in the comment section where they're like, people's lives are at stake. There's nothing funny about this. I don't know if y'all have been around the block a little bit, but we've been doing this for 1,210 days just to speak to those specific people. And you have to have a sense of humor about this eventually, because you can't treat every single human life like it is a Macbeth-style tragedy, because we have watched on this channel alone hundreds of thousands of people have their lights put out just trying to put together this news every day. So we can't really treat every single situation like that every day, lest we're going to go mental and be put into Arkham Asylum. I generally don't want to be put into Arkham Asylum. I generally like my job and like to cover the news. So we really can't treat every single situation with this utmost, most severe gravity, because we deal with that kind of a thing every single day. So it's something that we really can't do. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can.
Enforcer. We have breaking news that's coming out right this second. We're hearing of airstrikes in District 18 of Tehran, which is where the IDF had actually issued an evacuation warning and told civilians to get out of the area. It looks like we're now seeing the first video evidence of airstrikes in that district of Tehran, which is, I believe, near the airport, I believe. But let's take a look at that footage and see exactly what is happening with that, because it does appear to be at least near the Mehrabad airport, potentially, based on what I'm seeing here in the footage.
And let's take a look at it. And it does appear that there are ongoing Israeli airstrikes close to the area of the Mehrabad International Airport. This is all we have at the moment, but we might actually be able to get a little bit of geolocation going. Does that look like a highway down there, Matthew, to you?
It kind of does. I'm trying to figure out what that, if that's a reflection in the window or what that is out there. It looked like a tower with some lights on it or something out there in the distance. I was trying to see if that was maybe a control tower that I could see out there, but I couldn't really tell.
You know, I have a slight feeling that it may have actually come from somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. Is this a military air base right here at the international airport in this area? Right here? Like, that looks a lot like it's some sort of a military air basing. Possibly.
Yeah, they have. I believe they have a dual use airport there. It's dual use.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, actually, they, as a matter of fact, do. There were some F-14s back there, right there, actually. Those actually look like the F-14s that got blown up the other day by the Israeli Air Force, funnily enough. Like, the wing is jutted out in the exact same way and everything. But beyond that, it appears that this airstrike may be happening somewhere around there, because there's a larger roadway somewhere off around here. They're looking off into the distance. I can't really see any specific towers that would be special or of note to actually point out here, but it is possible that this is actually where the airstrike was being conducted, was on the northern side of the northeastern side of the Mehrabad International Airport, at least from what we can tell right now. So that's actually a confirmed airstrike location, at least at this point. So we'll be trying to get more information and news on that as we're covering the situation right now. But this is a interesting one to see. It actually does appear that there is pretty much just an ongoing slight trickle of airstrikes right now by the Israelis on Tehran. Nothing incredibly big where it's just massive intensity going on for about an hour. It's like, it's generally smaller airstrikes hitting pinpoint targets, but over the course of several minutes or dozens of minutes between the strikes. So
we have gotten some more footage right this second. Some good high definition footage, it looks like, of these strikes. It looks like many different clips, actually.
And let's take a look at them. Oh, you see one of the airstrikes right there. This guy sounds sleepy. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the strike from another angle.
Also, there still are people in the streets, at least near the airport.
And then we got one last clip as well right here. And actually, man, that appears to be right around the area that we pointed out on the map just a second ago.
Yeah, there's the highway. There's some sort of building right there on the perimeter. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the exact location.
And geolocation is our strong suit. But beyond that, it does appear that those airstrikes are happening around the Iranian Air Force location of the airbase, or more so the airport itself. And that seems to be the general area where those airstrikes are coming from, at least for right now. So that does seem to be our ongoing situation. Looks like the Israelis are hitting at the Iranian Air Force once again, not only in Isfahan and also in the area, I believe, of the city of Hamadan, but also within Tehran as well. What do you know, folks? They're hitting just about everywhere. And so with that, I hope that just addressed that news that we have coming out at this moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here, our next super chat is going to go to Jerry Komarech, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jerry, for that support. He said, "You guys are awesome and have been my go-to source for accurate global news, and first-time super chat for the chocolate stash. And I really appreciate your mastery of internet channels to add scope and depth of the content for us."
And I thank you for enjoying the scope and depth of the content that we deliver. We try our best to make sure that it is always a success, and we're happy to know that it was a success again so far tonight. And I got to thank you so much for saying that we are awesome and have been the go-to source for you for actual accurate global news. I'm glad to know that we're beating out the mainstream news. We're beating them out practically every day at this point. And hell, I could say that we couldn't be more elated because the mainstream news is absolutely horrendous, and we would love to know that we're able to give them a run for their money and really teach them how to do news if eventually we could. And so I got to thank you massively once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you with those kind words and that incredible support, we would not be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to be a $20 support from Mr. Biscuit. And Mr. Biscuit said, I love your work. And is there any chance that Iran has a hidden weapon in Israel, but are having trouble activating it in LSA?
I would say the chances of that are highly unlikely. A dirty nuke would be difficult to smuggle in, at least for now, because they would have to try and find some way to be able to take the weapon, transport it into Israel, most likely by sea through a port of entry, like Haifa or Ashdod, and then make it through the sensors that usually are found in every single port at this point to try and detect if there's any sort of radiological material inside of a container. So it would be pretty impossible for them to get that stuff in, at least from what we would know. So I'd say it's highly unlikely that they have any kind of a weapon that's sitting around in Israel and they haven't activated it yet. And so with that, I hope that addresses that well. I thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have $8 super chat from Donna Weigelin, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Dana, for that support. I think I mispronounced your name the first time. Sorry about that. And hopefully I didn't butcher it too bad. But Donna said, or Dana, if I'm getting it mixed up again, what countries do you think would offer asylum to Iran's top leadership? And I'm enjoying the show.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the show. And to answer your question, the only two countries I could see providing asylum that the Iranians would also reach out to would be the People's Republic of China or the Russian Federation. They have decent enough relations with both of them that they could end up living in exile in either place. So I think that the Iranians would probably end up picking Russia, since it's been the forever home for Bashar al-Assad, now without a country. They may also pick the Chinese as well, because the Chinese have a much more invested economic interest in Iran and may want to also show that they can truly protect leaders who end up on bad times. But the Russians have already kind of abandoned the Iranians at this point. But they also did that to Assad. But Assad was still welcome to return, well, pretty much live in exile in Russia whenever his government completely collapsed. So that's what I'm thinking, either Russia or China right now. And so thank you once again for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to be a $20 super chat from none other than AAJAS, who puts in a 20. He said, the IAEA, the Atomic International Agency resolution, found that Iran has enriched uranium to 60% and was voted against by China, Russia, and Burkina Faso. And last year, BF signed an MOU with Iran about sharing nuclear knowledge and material. And what's your take on BF?
I thank you for the support, first off. What's my take on BFs? Well, you know, if you have one, you have one. I just don't know. But beyond that, as far as my answer on Iran's nuclearization, they're clearly working towards a nuclear weapon, and it's pertinent to stop them. Unfortunately, I don't know all of the abbreviations that you listed.
I think BF is Burkina Faso.
What do I think of Burkina Faso? Hell, I mean, they really don't have much of a say in anything. Have y'all seen Burkina Faso lately? I mean, it's an incredibly minute country within Western Africa with practically no economy. So it's a little bit interesting to see that they would vote against it, or even be involved in the vote at all. So that would be my take on that. I can't even really think. Oh, let me go pull up Burkina Faso's GDP.
I know they export really good cashews that they sell in the store. I know that.
Oh, this is the guy with the red beret, Matthew. That's that country. And they have a GDP.
Oh, yeah, the warlord.
Yeah, the warlord guy who's in charge of the whole place. And they have a GDP of $20 billion. So not really that significant. And so I'd have to say, generally, Burkina Faso is a wild place because of the warlord. But beyond that, I don't even know why their vote would even count, because it's not like they're a significant country economically or militarily. But it does appear that their economy is rapidly growing. It went from about $2 billion, well, actually $1.8 billion at like the beginning of the year 2000. They've actually made it all the way up to $20 billion. So for a country that size, it's actually pretty impressive, honestly, that they were able to grow that rapidly over about the past 25 years. But with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, moving on to our next one here. I was trying to check something also real quick just to give everybody a gist. Let's see here. Burkina Faso is 4 mark Cubans in net worth. That just gives you an idea of just how big the GDP of Burkina Faso is. That's 4 mark Cubans. But anyways, moving on here from our mark Cuban scale and back to our super chats here. This one is going to go to Robert Massey III, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Robert Massey, for that support. He said, have you guys heard anything about the airbase that Iran had buried in the mountains somewhere, or was that just a propaganda video?
It actually is a airbase that exists, but the actual runway is outside in the wide open. It's just that the aircraft shelters themselves are inside of the mountain. I haven't personally heard of that airbase being hit yet. I'm assuming that it's probably going to be hit or has been hit. It's just that we haven't heard any information about it, because to pretty much close off all those aircraft from having access outside, you just blow up the entrance into that hardened shelter, and then it's pretty much closed off for good until they excavate it and pretty much save those aircraft. So with that in mind, I generally would say I haven't heard much about it. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Husker Nation, who puts in a 10. And they said, last time Iran mined the Strait of Hormuz, the United States had a proportional response. And also the Fat Electrician YouTube channel, he said, and also took out half of their Navy in an 8-hour workday.
Yes, that is true. That would be called Operation Praying Mantis. That was when the Mantis was praying. It wasn't really a Mantis that was praying. It was Khamenei, because he was watching everyone get krilled. Or krilled, in another word. Let me see here. This is Samuel Roberts being carried away after it hit a mine. Let me see if I can show y'all. Let's see. Where in the world? Okay, so apparently they got a load of pictures of the Sahand, which was a Iranian frigate that got bombed by the U.S. But we went after them. We destroyed half of their navy in just a couple of hours because they ended up mining the Strait of Hormuz, or largely a mine floated out into the Strait of Hormuz and then hit our destroyer, the Samuel B. Roberts. So we decided to respond by just obliterating half of the Iranian navy. So I would say that it ought to be a good move that we do again. Why not bomb the Iranian navy a second time? I think that'd be a great idea, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, we're getting some breaking news right now. We're being told by Iranian media that there are huge explosions near the Fath and the Hakima neighborhoods in Tehran. And I'm maybe mispronouncing that. We'll take a look here on the screen. It's Fath and Hakima, or Hakimaya, something like that, neighborhoods in Tehran. But right now we're hearing massive explosions in those neighborhoods, and also hearing reports of massive blast in the eastern parts of Tehran as well at this very moment. So it looks like the strikes are back on inside of Tehran. We're just not sure exactly what the targets are right now at the very moment.
And we'll be waiting to see some video or picture evidence of those strikes that are happening right now inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, or specifically Tehran itself at the moment. But we are able to hear of explosions near the Fath and Hakimiyya neighborhoods inside of Tehran at this moment in time right now. And so with that, I hope we were able to put out that news for all of y'all. We are going to be trying to get video and picture evidence of that here quite soon. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to John Rococo, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, John, for that support. We also have a 10 from Shaky Jake and Daniel Briscoe, who each put in a 10 as well. And we appreciate all three of you, Shaky Jake, Daniel, and John, for that support. We also have a 10 from JoJo2010, who said, I love you guys and I watch every day. However, are there any significant updates on the Ukraine-Russia war in the last week? And Israel is a priority, but any updates on Ukraine? And honestly, the biggest thing I can tell you that I've seen so far is I have been tracking the Ukraine war in the background, because obviously we are still heavily covering that area when the Iran news is not going on right now, this major sense. Right now, Russia is ramping up its attacks on civilians, specifically in Kyiv. The other day, Kyiv had a very large attack conducted on it by Russia, and I believe there were some casualties, if I do recall correctly, from that attack. And Russia seems to be doubling down the fact that they're going after civilians, kind of like we're seeing Iran doing as well right now inside of Israel. It seems to be that Russia and Iran love to go after innocent civilians instead of going after the military of the other country. So that is pretty much the only big news we've had at the moment. And also, there was an attack by the Ukrainian military inside of Russia on some of their infrastructure. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is pretty much all of the major recaps that we have at the moment. And also last night, for the first time ever, cluster rounds were actually used on the city of Kyiv by the Russian army, which also caused a decent amount of casualties as well. And there's also a great deal of danger now in those areas from unexploded cluster rounds that are now sitting in the streets or around the streets at the moment. But those are generally the major updates coming from Ukraine right now. We could, of course, get into battlefield minutia around Pokrovsk, Toretsk, and other major front lines, but generally it's there's still big news going on there. I never want to make it sound like Ukraine doesn't have a lot of big news going on, but it's kind of business as usual sort of big news rather than big breaking news, first of its kind, something we've never seen before kind of news, to put it that way. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here, also, by the way, am I coming through loud and clear? By the way, I was told by somebody I sound like Mr. Roboto there for a minute. So am I coming through clear?
You were coming through loudly and clear. You were before. I don't know why that person said that. I don't know why. That's interesting.
It happens. It happens occasionally. Sometimes Discord gets a little bit choppy, but thankfully it is good to go. But our next one here goes to Tony Capotorto, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Tony, as well, for that generous $50 support. He said, I've heard rumors that this is a resource conflict, meaning oil conflict, and stemmed from Iranian proxies attempting to upset oil exports and control shipping channels to destabilize the United States, and in preparation for the BRICS currency. And what are your thoughts?
That's generally trying to find some logic to the madness. The general answer is that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been in an ongoing proxy war against the state of Israel since their inception in 1979. Well, at least the Islamic Republic of Iran's inception in 1979. And this is more so a continuation of that than some sort of a preparation for the grand almighty BRIC. The BRIC sank like a brick. Like there's no concept of a BRICS currency at this point because India and China hate each other's guts, and also China supports Pakistan, and Pakistan and India hate each other, so they're not going to do anything about that. And China also wants some of India's land in Arunachal Pradesh, as well as the area of Ladakh or Jammu and Kashmir, which the Indians are not a big fan of either, so there would be no currency between those two. The Russian Federation is also economically about to collapse, so it'd be a pretty bad idea to combine everyone into a singular currency in BRICS, so that way the Russians could tank it, kind of like the Greeks tanked the euro back in the early 2010s. It generally would all be a bad idea, a terrible idea to make a BRICS currency at the moment. So this isn't really being done as some sort of a grander scheme to bring forward the BRICS currency and destabilize America. That's honestly like trying to come up with something that theorized from what the people are saying that you're hearing. That sounds like Tucker Carlson talk of coming up with like these grand theories, like all of these countries are, at a Bohemian Grove or something, coming up with some sort of a grand plan. The truth is that Iran hates the Israelis because the Iranians are a specific sect of Islam and a radical extremist variant of it, and the Israelis are Jewish, and so they just hate them because they're Jewish. That's kind of the truth of it. They've been at each other's throats. Really, Iran's been at Israel's throat, and Israel's been fighting to survive since 1979. And really, what we're seeing right now is a continuation of one thing that happened on October 7th of 2023, when hundreds of Hamas fighters poured out across the Gaza Strip border. They broke through the fences, and then they slaughtered about 1,500 innocent civilians, and then took hundreds or thousands more hostage and brought them back into the Gaza Strip. The Israelis started a ground campaign against Hamas inside of Gaza, and then as a response, Hezbollah decided to join in and try and relieve some of the pressure off of Hamas by launching strikes onto the Israelis that were almost endless for several days and weeks. The Israelis then responded by conducting a ground invasion in a limited form into southern Lebanon, and then also bombed and killed Hezbollah's leader, Nasrallah, or as we called it, they hit Nasrallah in the Snazrallah. That got Iran pissed off, royally pissed that Nasrallah got killed, and they said, how dare the Israelis respond militarily to these proxy forces that just slaughtered 1,500 people and took thousands hostage in Israel. We're going to shoot at them back. Then Iran fired a massive missile volley at the Israelis that was dozens of missiles strong. The Israelis shot down most of them, but some of the missiles did make it through, and back then they actually hit the Nevatim air base, so it actually looked like they were kind of going after military targets a little bit. And then after that, the Israelis wanted to respond against the Iranians and actually do what they're doing right now. Back then, back in the latter part of 2023, actually it was the early part of 2024 by this point. And so then the current president of the United States, who was President Biden, said that they could not, and just don't do anything and don't respond, and the situation will eventually fix itself or settle itself. And it really didn't. Now, once again, that's something that the current president also said as well. Just want to make that a little bit clear. Up until recently, that was also the same premise that he was working off of. But the Israelis didn't really respond in any major form. They conducted a very small airstrike at Isfahan and also around some air defense sites in the country, but that was it. That was all their response was. And then because of that, later on, the Iranians would launch another missile attack, ranging in dozens of ballistic missiles against Israel again, and Israel wouldn't respond. And then the new administration came in, the Trump administration here in the United States, and they started new negotiation talks with the Iranians, because while all of this was going on between Israel and Iran, there was also a statement that also, I forgot to mention, the Houthis were a whole thing going on during this time as well. The Houthis were attacking commercial shipping in the southern Red Sea at the time in support of larger Iranian operations and proxy operations against Israel, and also attempting to destabilize the United States just because the United States was helping out in the defense of the state of Israel throughout all of the prior attacks that we've been talking about so far. I forgot to mention that. So now we're up to the point where President Trump takes office in January 2024 to get to this part of the story, and then pushing on through there. So the new president decides that it's a good idea to talk to the Iranians about denuclearization. We get involved in those talks, and the Iranians stall every talk. They stalled 5 of them in a row. They didn't make it past square one. We didn't even find common ground with them in any of those talks, and we just continued to talk to them. The entire time, while all this is going on, the Iranians are getting closer and closer to creating a nuclear weapon, and with the ongoing situation with Israel being directly fired at by the Iranians over the past year and a half, it became incredibly clear to the Israelis if the Iranians get a nuke, it's possible they could just fire one of those at Israel, and it would be all over for Israel. So Israel is making it incredibly clear to the United States, look, there's not really a lot of time left anymore. We've got to do something combined, most likely, about this nuclear weapon, because that could threaten to kill all of us and all of y'all as well. This is a significant threat. And so the United States pretty much told them, you're not going to do anything, or else there will be serious consequences, until recently, and the Israelis made the call, from what we can tell, on their own, that they couldn't wait, and they do not care what kind of consequences the United States will put on them. It is time to strike. That's what began the strikes that we saw 5 days ago, well, 6 days ago at this point today, and that's where we're at right now. So it really wasn't a part of some sort of a grand scheme by Iran to destabilize America, or, as I think Tucker Carlson put it, in the American empire. It's nothing like that. It's more so the fact that this has been ongoing for decades, and this is more so just the recent continuation of the whole thing. But I say, why not put an end to it? This has been going on for decades. We have a chance right now to actually finish this thing and hopefully end it once and for all. And I say, why not? That seems like a good idea to me. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to LSA Rocks, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, LSA Rocks, as well, for that support. And we do appreciate that. And he did not leave a comment, actually, but thank you very much once again, LSA Rocks, for that support. And we also had a $10 support from Magic Beans, who said, I hope America doesn't get involved. They're too soft. Let Israel handle it. Let us give them the weapons. They don't believe in the Geneva Convention.
I would say we should get involved. I don't know why we shouldn't get involved. Iran nuclearizing is a problem for us as much as it is for Israel or the UK or France or anyone, because Iran could use that nuclear weapon to kill us. I know there's like this whole thing out there right now that's being pushed by some people who now are these doves, these peace doves, that we're not supposed to be getting involved in anything. But the truth of the matter is that they're going to take that nuclear weapon that you're about to let them build with that kind of a mindset, and they're going to come and they're going to vaporize you in a multi-thousand degree hellfire with that nuclear weapon. So it's not really a question of whether you like the idea of Israel being softies or not. It's really the question of, do you want to get vaporized in a nuclear hellfire and not get to watch your favorite television shows again? And generally, my answer is no. I want to be around for the third season of Squid Game, me personally. So I'd say let's go over there and let's obliterate their asses, because they're going to use that nuclear weapon against us or threaten us with it eventually. That's what a lot of people aren't getting in America. This is not the 1700s. Paul Revere ain't riding on a horse out of Boston to go and tell everyone the British are coming. A nuclear weapon can be fired from Iran and hit the United States in about 30 minutes from its launch. That is something I don't want to deal with anytime soon. And so it's a really kind of a silly notion to make it sound like this is just a Israeli problem when it's quite clear that this is an American problem. They are making a nuke that will kill them and us alike. Because guess what? The nuclear weapon isn't going to come flying over here and it's going to be like a Looney Tunes cartoon where it flies right over Washington, D.C. It just nicks the top of the U.S. Capitol building and then goes, oh, wait a minute. These aren't Jews, and then it takes off and starts flying back towards Israel. It's not going to do that. It's going to hit us, and it's going to kill all of us. So why in the world do we keep on acting like this is just an Israeli problem when it's clearly not just an Israeli problem? I mean, with North Korea making nuclear weapons, you could have made that same argument back in 2008 that the South Koreans should have dealt with it because this isn't our problem. It's just South Korea's problem. And guess what? Since 2008, in the present day right now, North Korea specifically developed intercontinental ballistic missiles to carry that nuclear bomb that would have only been a threat to South Korea at the time, all the way to the entirety of the lower 48 of the United States, meaning that you are now under threat from a North Korean nuke, and we have been for years. And I don't want to see that happen again. I don't think the Iranians should have a nuclear weapon, and I think that if it takes the United States going in and breaking some eggs, that's the way we got to make the omelet this time around. There's just really no choice in this whole matter. But I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, but I do not at all agree with the notion or the concept that somehow, some way, the Iranians creating a nuclear weapon will never threaten or harm the United States of America, because that's living in a completely fictitious fantasy that the modern world does not exist in. But a big thanks once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I wanted to shout out that LSA Rocks had put in a super sticker, and the sticker said, it said on it, a #1 of the Doge holding it. So thank you very much, LSA Rocks, once again, for that super sticker. And we also have our next one here, which goes to No Name Army Soldier, who puts in a 20. He said, I was censored per Executive Order 14149.
And I thank you for the support. Unfortunately, to hear that you were censored, but I do thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Mario Lester. And he said, no sleep for you guys. And I appreciate all the hard work you guys do. Long live the LSA. And please make some merchandise and take a question from the chat.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, Mario Lester. And hopefully we'll be able to make some merchandise once we get Enforcer HQ 3.0 up and running. But I do massively thank you so much once again for support. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew, for Morrow?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to none other than Thor, who said the president has tweeted that the U.S. is currently controlling the skies above Iran and not Israel, and is there and confirmation on his statements for that statement?
We haven't seen any confirmation of U.S. involvement anywhere inside of Iran at the moment, or any official U.S. statements confirming that. So that appears to be more so a statement that Israel is aligned with the United States, so through proxy, we control Iran's airspace. I think that's largely what the statement means. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to AMP Ryder, who puts in a 10. And he said, did we get an update on the Iranian Navy that was in the port for the last few days? And did strikes get through the air defense?
We still have gotten no confirmed reports of anything in Bandar Abbas. We've gotten 2 confirmed days of air defense activity there and no confirmations of damage. They didn't shoot down the Iranian missiles. They did hit. We don't know what they hit because we're not getting any information on it so far. So it may have hit something out of the periphery of Bandar Abbas where it's not filmable, but it appears that the Iranian Navy is still at large and generally intact. Also, take a look at that. That's actually an Iranian patrol boat, speedboat right there. Like, I actually just saw that. I was like, what is creating this insanely large wake within what would generally be a no-wake zone? Like, this is a quay right here that's supposed to be like a breakwater to create still waters within this port. I was like, what gate is just going like 60 through here? It's this thing. Let me go show y'all the Iranian Navy speedboats. There it is.
Oh,
That's
wow.
rough.
Look at that.
That's
That is
really
rough.
rough. Yeah. They have a load of these. They have a lot of different classes of these things, by the way. There's ones that actually look kind of all right. Like this, that's literally just a speedboat. No lie.
That is really, honestly, it's nothing special, really.
Yeah, and then they also have the fishing boat crews, which also go out into the Strait of Hormuz. These are all very close to coastal operation sorts of vessels. They do have some slightly larger ones, but most of the Iranian Navy is actually made up of speedboats, funnily enough, of different types, like these right here.
Interesting. Also, by the way, sorry if this seemed distracting. I'm trying to do some research into something that people were mentioning about an E-4B, one of the Doomsday aircraft flying around. So I was trying to do some looking into that, which we can cover here in just a minute when we get done with this question.
All right, and so with that, I hope we were able to address that well. We haven't been able to hear of any confirmed hits against the Iranian Navy, at least for now. Hopefully, we'll be able to hear of them soon. But with that, what do we got, Matthew, in that developing news at the moment?
All right, so it looks like number one tracked aircraft in the world right now is a Boeing 747 E-4B, which is also known as a doomsday plane, which the U.S. Air Force uses for readiness in case of a really, really bad situation. And typically, it's used as an airborne command post for national emergencies. There's always one on standby, at least. Sometimes there's more than one, but there has to be one on standby. That includes a mobile command center for high-ranking officials, including the president and the Secretary of Defense, to ensure that the government does not become fractured in the event of a catastrophic event. So that is what they're used for. Right now, we're seeing that Order 1 on Flight Radar 24/7 is currently outbound from Shreveport. It's currently around Washington, D.C. Its destination is Camp Springs right now. So it looks like it is maybe landing at this very moment, actually. I think it is. I think it has landed, actually. It's at the airport right now, outside of Washington, D.C. So this is nothing really new. I see people mentioning it and tracking it like it is something new. Really, it's not. It's kind of typical, actually. And it's really nothing to be alarmed about, I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
Doomsday planes are nothing to be incredibly concerned about. The Doomsday planes are generally always either operational on a runway or flying at some point. So if you ever hear anyone out there, I just got to say this because there are some people who really feed off of this on YouTube, that the Doomsday bombers are flying and it's all going down and we're all going to die. That's not the case. It's pretty common, actually, for those things to take off and fly around a little bit. And most of the time, quite literally all the time, there's nothing ever really going on. So it's quite a normal sort of a thing, just to make sure to dispel any fears or concerns that people may have out there in the audience about hearing that a doomsday plane is flying. But with that, I hope that addresses that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to be let's see, let me scroll back up and get it. And this one is going to be a $10 super chat from Morrow Lester, who said, do you think this was the plan all along? Deplete the Iron Dome and then strike with the big stuff?
I think that it may have not necessarily been, because we're still hearing that the tempo of Iranian attacks is decreasing, and also the amount of missiles involved is also decreasing as well. So it looks to me like we're actually seeing that the Iranians may have just lost or really lacked the ability to actually fire off a high tempo and volley of missile fire over an extended period of time. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. I thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Yugi, who puts in a 10. And Yugi said, is there conscription soon?
No, there's not going to be any conscription here in America. That would have to be done by an act of Congress. And I would have to say that we're probably not going to see anything like that, because we never had conscription during the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, or the Gulf War. So I would generally assume that we will not be seeing any conscription this time either. Everyone who's going to be going over is going to be volunteers. And so I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone had mentioned something about the E-4B, the Doomsday plane. I really hate calling it the Doomsday plane because that feeds into like that clickbait garbage that some channels out there like to run with about, oh, the Doomsday plane's flying. It must be like Armageddon or something. That's not what that means. Like, a government has to plan for the worst case scenario, and the E-4B is like the personification of planning for the worst case scenario. It's for continuity of government, and it's always like there's always one on standby, like I mentioned. Someone said, why isn't that classified where this plane is? It's not classified because typically this plane right here is well protected. It's protected against electromagnetic pulses. So if there was an EMP or a nuclear blast, it is protected against it. It has a specific classified shielding inside the aircraft that protects it from that. It also has a lot of very advanced electronics, electronic warfare systems on board as well. You might notice a little hump up there at the top. That's actually a communications node at the front of the aircraft. And also carries satellite communications equipment as well, so they can stay connected with other world leaders while they're flying around in this thing in case there is a really bad national emergency that the president needs to be protected inside this aircraft. So it's just a flying night watch aircraft, basically. It's a command post that is well shielded, basically like a sky bunker of sorts to a degree. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Cody Anderson, who puts in a 20. He said, I'm glad to see the constant coverage of Israel dismantling Iran, as this will add stability to the region and degrade proxies in the region, as this has been a problem for decades. And I'm a new listener, and I love the coverage.
Thank you so much for the support, Cody Anderson. I definitely agree. A lot of people keep pretending like knocking out Iran's going to destabilize the region. I don't think a lot of people understand this, but the whole reason why a lot of the region's unstable is because of them. They're the ones who pretty much are solely funding and operating any terrorist organizations in the Middle East currently, and so knocking them out makes it the case that a lot of these major heavy-hitting terrorist organizations don't have any funding or weapons provisions from that point on. So this actually could end up being a pretty good thing in general. To see that the Iranians are pretty much blasted or bested at this point by the Israelis. And it's happening in real time at this moment. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again. I hope that addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Scott Binkley, who puts in a 14 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Scott, for that 14 Canadian, and we appreciate that very much. And we also have a super chat that just came in a moment ago from Michael Thomas, who puts in a 10. He said, Iranian officials asking for refuge in Canada. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard of that, actually. I largely had to declare ignorance on that. But thank you for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is another $10 super chat. This time it is going to go to Lydia Arellano, who puts in a 10. And they said, it's about time I gave, and I've been watching off and on since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, and all the best, and thank you.
Hey, and thank you so much for giving us all the best, and thank you for having been around for a long time and enjoying this channel and watching it. We try our best, and I hope that we've been able to do our best, at least for news coverage right now, here on this channel. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that it addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Yugi once again, who puts in a 10. He said, I don't know if it went through, but is conscription soon?
No. Conscription is probably not going to be soon. We've never really conscripted any forces since Vietnam, and I'm highly doubting we will. So a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Marcos Chapman. And Marcos said, what does martyred even mean? Martyred? Orbs and UAPs have apparently been seen around Iran's nuke facilities after they were decimated, and there's radiation leakage, which attracts these objects.
And I thank you for the support. I generally say that we haven't heard of any orbs, at least on our coverage, anywhere around those areas. We haven't seen any video or picture evidence of them either. But as far as the question goes on what does martyred mean? Martyred means that you die for a cause and you end up becoming a rallying point for that cause. That's pretty much what it means for the large part. And also, let's see. And I hope that answers that somewhat well, Marcos, because I think I answered both parts of your question right there. So a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to be a 10 from David Hawk. And David put in that 10 with no comment. And we also have a 10 from Dan Mosby, who said, good work. And thank you very much to Dan and David for that support, and we appreciate that. We also have a 10 from Mr. Dill. And Mr. Dill said, the U.S. has nuclear artillery rounds for the M109, and Iran may have similar battlefield rounds.
I thank you for support, Mr. Dill, and I believe that is correct, but I generally doubt that the Iranians would have those kinds of weapons, because generally strategic-sized weaponry would be the first order of the day, and then start to nuclearize the rest of the force however you can. And so with that, I thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Noah Atter, who puts in a 10. And he said, can anyone confirm the whereabouts of the WC-135R that took off from Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska about 10 hours ago, according to the recent reports from various sources, if possible?
And let's take a look. Ah, yes, the Constant Phoenix. This is the nuclear sniffer, isn't it? Yeah, it actually is the nuclear sniffer right here. I haven't been able to hear much about this aircraft. I actually haven't had this in my news coverage specifically. So, Matthew, do you know anything about it?
I'll be honest with you, I really haven't heard much about it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really like familiar with that aircraft very much, so I couldn't really tell you much of anything about it.
Man, this is the nuclear sniffer, the one that sniffs for bombs. They sniff for the nukes. Um, they have like a big snout that'll extend out of the front of the plane. It looks like a dog snout, and you just hear it sniffing up there as it flies around. It's a really interesting aircraft, but beyond that, I could unfortunately not really tell you much about this aircraft that took off. That would be out of our purview of news for the moment. But I do thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to be a $10 support that came in from James Steele. And he said, a first-time watcher, but a first-time giver, and bravo on the work.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying our work. We hope that it really has met a high criteria for news coverage tonight. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Mr. Shrewman Kid. And he said Putin withdrew support for Iran about 15 to 20 minutes ago after a phone call. And it just got here. And not sure if you covered that.
Oh yeah, we didn't really cover that actually. Yeah, I've got a well, actually, we didn't cover that today as a part of our news. That was actually a part of Matthew's short war video earlier in the day. And as kind of as an order of business, we don't really cover a lot of what's in the videos because it would be redundant for the large parts. We kind of keep that in the video, and then we just cover what's happening live on air. So I do thank you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a $20 support that just came in from Anton Leimbach. And thank you very much, Anton, for that support. He said, Israel has wanted to draw us into a war with Iran for decades, and the occupation of Iran would be worse than an Iraq. Honestly, Anton, I would say you are correct. Now, one thing, I'm not going to make any bones about it. The United States has to be cautious when dealing with Israel because Israel, even though it is an ally of the United States, Israel is a little bit war happy to a certain extent. Now, Israel is minded like that because they're literally surrounded by enemies on all sides. That's why they're so anxious to protect themselves like that. So I understand why they're like that, but the U.S. has to take that into consideration when they're dealing with them and, obviously weigh that into the entire equation. So in this situation, I would say just looking at it objectively, with Iran developing a nuke, we needed to address that. That's something that we have to address. And whether or not Israel wanted to draw us into a war is sort of irrelevant because we need to get rid of those nuclear weapons. And in order to do that, Israel needs the bunker buster to go into Fordo and destroy that facility. So I think that is a good warranting of our involvement, I would say, and not just a mere, I guess you could say, happenstance of jumping in. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. This isn't something like, I get it. Like, I know who's saying this kind of stuff out there. People like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all these people, who, like, just to be entirely honest with y'all here, just a few years ago was all up in arms and ready to go over to the Middle East and literally wipe out any country that was not Israel. Now it's, I guess, in vogue for all of them to act like Israel is quite literally the scourge of the earth. But the reality is that this has really nothing to do with Israel because this has something more to do with us. Iran hates us. They don't like you. Like, I hate to tell you. I do thank you for the support, and I don't mean to say that as anything offensive or trying to take a jab at you. They don't like me. They don't like you. We're Americans, you see, and they see us as the enemy to their country, as on a governmental level. So when they're creating this nuclear weapon, they're not creating it with the idea of killing an Israeli. They're creating it with the idea of killing enemies of the state, which is us and them combined. So if they ever get a chance, they're going to fire that thing at us or they're going to fire it at them. It's really a question of who's going to get it and when. And that's kind of the issue that we have right now. It doesn't really matter that Israel wants to drag us into war for years, and you can bring up the USS Liberty, which could be explained away as any sort of a friendly fire incident, and then someone can go, but they saw the flag, they flew over. Yeah, and there was an American Apache that saw a British flag flying over a British convoy in the Gulf War, and we still killed 20 British soldiers with that Apache. That, in terms of casualties, ended up being worse than the USS Liberty, but you don't see the British holding that against America to this day and going, the Americans really want to kill us all. That's just a fantasy. It's a fiction. But with what's going on in Iran, they're trying to create a nuclear weapon to kill us. So I'm not looking at it as I'm trying to protect the Israelis. Like, protecting the Israelis is a secondary thing, in my opinion. I'm looking at it as I'm protecting me. I'm going to be living by tomorrow. They won't be. At least with the Iranians, as far as I'm concerned, in the government, if they're going to keep pressing forward with nuclearization. So that's how I'm generally looking at it. It's a little bit of a different standpoint than how other people are looking at it. Like, we are not also under the nuclear gun if Iran made a nuclear weapon. And those people are quite literally living in a delusional sort of a world. Like, there is no scenario where Iran just goes, okay, now that we have a nuclear weapon, we only hate Israel and we don't hate America anymore. Like, we don't want to play with them anymore. That's not how they're going to work. They're going to go, oh boy, now we got Israel on the ropes, and now we really got America on the ropes, and we're going to start working towards an ICBM so that way we can hit and kill anyone in America that we want to. That's how they're really going to work. So I know, like, who's been saying that kind of stuff and where it's coming from, but the truth is that those people are working on a fictitious sort of a mindset. It's living in a world that does not exist, because Iran has made it quite clear for years that they hate the United States. I mean, hell, just look at their recent actions recently. When the Israelis said, we're going to strike Iran, and America clearly said, we're going to have nothing to do with that, and if they do that, they're on their own. Iran went out of their way to say, if Israel does that, we are going to attack U.S. bases in the area, and we're going to drag America into this, whether they want to be involved or not. That clearly shows you that they literally view Israel and the United States with the same hatred and just regale for both the same. Like, we like, as far as we are involved in this area, the Iranians hate us as much as they hate Israel. So it's not something where we can just step back and say we're not involved and let them make a nuke, because they're going to threaten us with it. So with that, I hope that does address it well. I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Illinium, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Illinium, for that support. And we do appreciate that very much. It's very generous of you. And they said, first time watcher. And I'm so happy that YouTube offered your channel to me. And you cover a wide range of subjects and great work.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. And I gotta say, a massive thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and thank you for being a first-time listener. We try our best here on the channel, and I hope that we are doing incredibly well tonight. So a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, really quickly, I saw someone say, you're a fear monger. No, I'm not a fear monger. You see, if I die, I die. That's just the end of it. But the thing is that I really don't want to. I have a self-preservation mechanism built into me, like every human being does. And I'm not one to sit there and pretend like something's different than what it is. Like, this isn't something like with the war in Ukraine, one actually could try and make a fair argument that it's a little abstract because there's not a clear imminent threat present there, because it works off of the premise if Russia wins in Ukraine, and then they're going to threaten Eastern Europe, and then that drags us in. That could be argued as slightly abstract, actually, although it's quite an evident one because we have clear precedent for that in the Second World War. That's exactly how the Second World War happened, with the Germans and pretty much what was called at the time, let's see, what was it, Matthew? Concessions, something along those lines, I believe.
You're talking about, like, let's see here, what's that name where it starts with
appeasement.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the exact same way that worked. So while it's somewhat more of an abstract claim, we have a clear historical precedent to lay out that is something that is a reality. On the other hand, with this is a clear imminent threat. It is a country that has sworn itself as an enemy of the United States, that goes out of its way to fund and sponsor terrorist groups that not only attack Israel but the U.S. to try and create a nuclear weapon. So it's not something where we can just say, oh, well, this is fear-mongering because they wouldn't try and nuke us. No, they are going to try and kill you. It probably is a good thing for you to be scared, because that's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. So probably you need to actually feel the realistic fear of the situation, if you feel fear, and then respond to that appropriately. Because otherwise, you're literally choosing to stick your head in the sand and just act like this is not an imminent threat to the United States. With that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And also, folks, before we move on into the next ones, I do have to say that we're going to have to enact a Super Chat cutoff. We once again have about 140 Super Chats tonight, and we want to make sure that we are able to get through all of them and read them off. And so we are going to be starting a Super Chat cutoff from this point on. I thank everyone so much for y'all's support, and of course, you can continue to support the channel beyond this point. However, we will not be able to recognize any Super Chats that come in beyond this point right now, now or thank you for your support. So I'd highly encourage you all to wait until tomorrow so that way we can make sure to thank you all each individually for your support and to thank you all for helping this channel to keep on running. So I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, considering that we're hearing that there's generally a lull in the news coming out of Iran at the moment, considering that it's the break of day over there, and usually there's not a lot that goes on at this time, we are going to be largely rounding out our news, just to let you all know so that we all aren't sitting around waiting for, another major hour-long news segment. That's most likely not going to be happening. There will be sporadic news updates here and there, but we're generally going to be answering questions. And so with that, I hope that does also lay out a little bit what we're going to be doing for the rest of the stream there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to be a $20 super chat from none other than JR Pastel, and thank you very much, JR, for that $20 support. He said, I think it's about time that something's done with the radical.
I would agree. I think I think it's about time that something is done. And so I thank you for the support. I hope that it addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a $20 support as well from Matt Sachs. And Matt said, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how Erdogan is viewing all of this. And as you know, he's been openly against Israel, especially after 10/7. And you guys are great. And thank you for all that you do.
Oddly enough, Erdogan, well, not really oddly enough, it was pretty much like textbook. Erdogan denounced the Israelis for attacking the Iranians and said that it was a horrendous thing that they did, which is a little ridiculous considering that the Iranians pretty much attacked the Israelis through proxy first. So a little bit ridiculous from the Turks, but that's how he reacted to it. He hasn't reacted to it too well, but luckily he's a part of NATO and he's also a part of the greater Western world, so it doesn't really matter what he says because he kind of just has to sit there and watch it happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, as well for that support. And she said, listening, and you'll probably receive $5 by the time everyone gets their cut. So sorry. And you're working 2 more. And live chat question, please.
And thank you for the support, Margaret Hemsley. And yes, YouTube does take their cut of 30% from every super chat. And also the beautiful taxes also take a good other third or a good chunk of that as well. But beyond that, we do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. So big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question goes to Uncovered Cube, who said, what are the chances that this conflict makes China or Russia angry enough to react?
A little unlikely. It seems like the Russians have completely backed out as of today. Like entirely. Even the Iranian embassy has said, we won't forget this treachery. It's been so bad. So the Russians have literally pieced all the way out. I don't even think they're willing to be a third-party mediator anymore. And the Chinese have made almost no comments at all. So it looks like Iran is on their own again. So no one's going to get involved to help them out. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat that just came in from Jeremy Wilder. And Jeremy said, I think you guys are right about the Persian Gulf, but I think we are showing a massive amount of force the way we are trying to get Iran to surrender. And what do you guys think? And LSA.
And I would have to generally say that, let's see here. Let me make sure to get to that. I have to scroll down. Let's see. Can you reread that one again, Matthew, really quickly?
Jeremy said, I think you guys are right about the Persian Gulf, but I think we're showing a massive amount of force the way we're trying to get Iran to surrender. And what do you guys think? And LSA.
I would say so. I think it's a right kind of a move to be making at this point. At least inside of the or with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Hopefully, we'll be able to see that some sort of a capitulation is possible without massive force of arms. But if it's necessary, it's necessary, and it's the move we have to make for the large part. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, it came in after the cutoff, but big shout out to Frank the Tank USN for throwing in that $100 donation and also helping fund our work. We appreciate that, Frank. Thank you very much. And we also have a $10 super chat from Robert Tilden. And Robert said Israel could go it alone via ground forces.
Most likely not. The Israelis' ground forces are not that large, and also getting them to Iran would be the big issue because there's several hundred miles of other countries between them and Iran. So it's possible, but largely unlikely, and also be very difficult for Israel to sustain those operations with a giant, lengthy air corridor to have to drop off supplies to those Israeli ground forces. So with that, I thank you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
Also, shout out to Toasty70 for putting in a 50 Australian as well. It came in after the cutoff, so we can't address it, but thank you, Toasty, as well, for that generous 50 Australian support. We also have a $10 super chat from Lil Jen Studio, who said, I found my logo, the 30th Mech Brigade of Ukraine, by watching your channel 2 years ago.
Hey, and that's really cool, Lil's Gen Studio. And I got to thank you so much for supporting the channel. It's really cool to know that we've had people here with us along the whole journey as we've continued to cover news from literally everywhere, from Ukraine, from the Middle East, from East Asia, everything. And I got to thank you massively for the support and help with this channel to keep rolling. And a big thank you to you too as well. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Crisco, who puts in a 10. And he said, sharks with lasers live in the ocean, not the desert.
I suppose so. I do thank you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to How Dare You, who puts in a 10. They said, you guys are good, and rip mainstream media.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and rip to the mainstream media, indeed. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does just that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cheeky Angel, who puts in a 10. And they said, Enforcer Matt, is America growing soft? And whatever happened to America's motto of America will not compromise with terrorists? And what is the holdup on getting U.S. feet on the ground to round them up?
And I'd have to say that is a great question right there. Is America growing soft? Well, I'd say that some of the larger voices in America are growing soft. I mean, you can't look far until you won't run into someone who's what I would describe as a coward, really. At least in public description. Folks like Tucker Carlson, I'm not exactly a big fan of. Not really for their domestic political views. I really don't care about that. But as far as their foreign policy views, it is cowardice to the rawest umpteenth degree. As a matter of fact, it seems to be not just cowardice; it seems to be anti-American in its outset. And I generally say that we possibly need to see if these people are foreign agents, because it is so bizarre to see that these people who have large speaking platforms continuously say things that are to the detriment of the United States, and then try and encourage people that that's actually within their best interests as Americans to have as their beliefs or mindsets. The Iranians are creating a nuclear weapon to kill us. Like, it's not something that is a myth. It's not fear-mongering. It's the truth. They made that clear in the past, and they make that clear still. And people like him and other people like Candace Owens want to make it sound like we're not involved in this at all. Like, Iran doesn't hate us. Iran has never even talked about us. Israel is like that little guy in the Lord of the Rings, not the Lord of the Rings. It's like yeah, it is the Lord of the Rings, I think, with the guy next to the king who was like the advisor's like whispering stuff in his ear and turning us into an old, frail, decrepit man. That's not the case. That nuclear weapon is, yes, aimed at Israel and would possibly kill them if made, but it's also aimed at the United States as well. And it will be. And so acting like it isn't, that's just raw cowardice and trying to act like something clearly isn't our problem that is. And what if they got that nuclear weapon? You know what those people would be saying then? Those very same people that push the public and largely the government's mindset to think that it isn't our problem would then be saying, oh, look at how weak our government is and how little they care about Americans. They're a part of some sort of secret world order that actually was behind the scenes conspiring with Iran to allow them to have a nuclear weapon so that way they could kill Americans because they just want Americans to drop dead. Like, that's the next thing that they would move on to. It's really ridiculous. And I would say that generally, at least for the public speakers, good amount of them have gone soft, and they pretend like being soft is strong, but being soft is soft. There is no way to be soft and that is strong. There's just no way to work that. And it's quite obvious. I mean, no one even agrees with them. Not even the president agrees with those two. And he's even called them kooks and whacks and stuff, because who the hell can sit there and literally see a country developing a nuclear weapon to kill us and then go, that's not our problem? You would have to quite literally be blind or stupid to say something like that. Like, it's just ridiculous. So that's what I generally say, at least as far as the public speakers are going. It's just ridiculous, because I would say that America does not compromise with terrorists, and considering that we've declared for decades now, and I would say that it's certainly not necessary to be rescinded, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a terrorist state, that we should treat them like a terrorist state, and we should not negotiate with them. There should be ultimatums provided from the outset. Denuclearize, or there will be consequences. That's what I'd say. And I think that that's the approach that the United States should take to countries like that. And to other countries, we will of course give them the fair breadth. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt if we can. Like with the communist Chinese, with their ongoing trade negotiations, we'll give them a little bit of clearance room, to do the stupidity that they do and to negotiate with them about the ongoing trade situation. But with other countries that are quite truly terrorist states like Iran, there is no room for that. We have to treat them like they are. They are practically criminals of the global world. And I don't think that we should ever negotiate with a criminal, and we shouldn't negotiate with a terrorist. You don't see a prisoner trying to break out of prison, and the prison goes, "Oh, come on, buddy. I mean, if you come back, we'll cut down your sentence from 10 years to 5. You don't see that. They say, get back in prison, or we will make sure that you're shot because you're a dangerous individual. That's how they're treated, and I think that's how we should treat the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so with that, I thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Arkansas Traveler who said, I served in the Air Force as a Persian Farsi linguist for 20 years and learned a lot about Iran and its history and its people, and it would be nice to visit Iran someday.
And I have to thank you for the support. I would think it'd be neat to visit Iran someday. It's a very rich place culturally, actually. There's a lot that has happened in this area. This is actually where the modern day Turks, or at least the Ottomans, if you want to call them that, actually came from. They actually generally came from Iran, or really, well, actually, they came from everywhere, really. They originally started up in the steppes, kind of around Mongolia and Siberia, and then they kind of ventured on down through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, which actually also gets its name from the original Seljuk Turk people, and then into Iran. They ended up taking everything over through here. That's when they got introduced to Islam, and they were like, hey, Islam's pretty neat. And then after that, they were like, well, like, what would be cool to take? And they were like, wow, Istanbul. That would be, well, it was called Constantinople, Byzantium, actually, at the time, or Constantinople. And they were like, wow, that would be sick to take. So then they went to war with the Byzantine Empire, or the Roman Empire that still existed at that point, and then they destroyed them for the large part, and then that became the Ottoman Empire. They have a lot of history. Like, it's an insanely large amount. Even before the Seljuk Turks arrived, there was still a great deal of history from that area. And the steppes people, who actually came from those Russian and Mongol steppes, actually brought a lot of interesting stuff with them that it's just a really neat place culturally. Like, to just summarize it all, it's an incredibly neat place culturally. I would like to eventually go to Iran someday and take a gander around, but certainly not with the government or the nation that exists there right now. It'd have to be a different kind of government, a different kind of a nation, for me to ever want to go there and take a gander around the place. But it is pretty cool. I will give it that. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, this one did come in after the cutoff as well, but big shout out to Andrew Barbaro for that $20 support as well. We also have a $10 support from Bama FPV, and he said, after Iran is toppled for their deeds, will this make other want-to-be countries to think twice about pursuing the bomb?
I would say most likely so. A lot of these despotic regimes, however, are kind of like criminals. They go, well, none of those guys succeeded, but I'll succeed in robbing the bank, and then they try. But I think they'll dissuade some countries from trying to go forward with this sort of thing, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I also just saw someone try and come into the defense really quickly. I want to address this. Someone said, Candace and Tucker are the real ones. Let me say this really quickly. No, they're not, because I'll also tell you someone who's completely misled at this point right now about this whole situation, Bernie Sanders. So you can take literally everyone at this point from all these political ends here that I would say are on the far ends of both sides and plop them all together and look at them. There's no difference in between them. Bernie's saying we shouldn't go to war with Iran because it's an actual democratically elected country and it's a good country. And then look at what Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are saying. The Iranians creating a nuclear weapon, it's only for peaceful purposes. They're not even doing that. This is all a lie, and the Israelis are just trying to drag us in to get us all killed. They're all saying like the same thing. Like, it doesn't actually matter whose side they're from. One of them's far left, two of them are far right. They're both saying, well, all three of them are saying about the same thing. And the truth is that they've gone so far down the radicalist route on both ends. All three of them don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they don't even look at it through a realistic lens. There's a guy in Iran, to just address Bernie's goofy statements, called the Supreme Leader. Where in the world in any democratic country is someone called the Supreme Leader who's unelected and has been there for decades? There is no country in the world where that exists that is considered democratic. And then on the other hand, the endless one I've mentioned tonight over and over with Tucker and Candace Owens, the Iranians want to kill us as much as they want to kill Israel. So if they're making a nuclear bomb, it's aimed at us. It's like the North Koreans hate South Korea and they're creating a nuke, and they would be saying back then, oh, well, they're just making that to target South Korea. That isn't our problem. Look at it today. They created an ICBM just to make sure that that nuclear bomb that originally threatened South Korea and Japan could reach us and kill us too. And the Iranians are going to do that as well. That is what is going to happen. Like, that is guaranteed what is going to happen. And all three of those people are just too ignorant or too buried in their own goofy ways to actually see that coming around the pipe. Like, I don't even know how in the hell they could all think that. But with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, more bombers, more refueling tankers are on their way to the Middle East. Excuse me for coughing right there. But we're currently seeing it right now, some more deployments of refueling tankers to the Middle East. This is even more that we're seeing going over. So once again, another large deployments of aircraft heading that way. And it looks like we're seeing more taking off from other bases as well that we'll get you some more information about here shortly. But jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to DJ Dramatic Sticks, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, DJ, for that support. They said they want us to enter a ground war in Iran so they can do another Middle East war that whips out U.S. troops and 20 years fight again. And others group, and this one started a war.
I have to generally disagree, because that just doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't. Like, I don't even know how to work with this anymore because I've explained it into the ground. I just don't really know where to go with it from this point. So with that, thank you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wes Trueblood III, who puts in a 10. And Wes said, Shalom from Texas.
And I have to thank you for support and a big shalom out there to Texas. A huge thanks to you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Warren Edgar Gillespie, who puts in a 10. He said, good day, mates, and such excellent work in LSA.
And I got to thank you for support. And I got to say, thank you for enjoying our excellent work and supporting it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Matt Sachs. And Matt said, where do you think Erdogan stands in all this? He's become increasingly more radical against Israel. And what are your thoughts? And also, I think that might have been a duplicate right there. But thank you very much, Matt, for that $10 support as well. And we appreciate that very much. We also have a 10 from AAJAS. And they said, what is the maximum involvement that is acceptable for you to see from America? Just mops or more? Honestly, I would say if we got involved by actually conducting the airstrikes ourselves, not just providing these pieces of weaponry, I would say it's totally justified, me personally. This is a threat that is something that should be addressed by the entire world and not just Israel, because why are we letting Israel do the dirty work when it benefits every country around the world that's pro-Western? So, I think it's justified. But Enforcer, what do you say?
I would say it's entirely justified, and I certainly would guarantee you that it wouldn't just be GBU-57s alone, which are the MOPS. It would be everything. It would be the whole 9 yards. We would be conducting a full air operation against them pretty much every day, 24/7. So I hope that does address that well. And also, folks, listen to this. What should be said? You don't have any proof that Iran would attack us with a nuke. They don't have delivery systems for that. Let me change that to be something that would be more appropriate for the late 2000s. You don't have any proof that North Korea would attack us with a nuke. They don't have the delivery systems for that. Now think about that again. I'm going to let you think about that again, random commenter. And I'm going to let you think really deeply about that. Is that true now or is it not? And then get back to me with an answer. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here goes to Amateur Radio Camps by AI4NW, puts in the 10. And they said, just some love from the amateur radio community.
Hey, and thank you so much for the love from the amateur radio community. And a massive thanks to you once again for the support and helping us keep it rolling. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Sparky107107, who says, are you guys going to take a holiday and come play with the model trains during the August 22nd meet and greet? And info's on the channel. And I want to meet you guys.
And I thank you so much for the support. I don't know if we really could. We have very busy schedules, and traveling to Canada may be a little bit tough these days for us because we have to. I have to personally get a passport in the first place. So with that, I don't think, unfortunately, actually, I would be able to. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from the Nemesis. They said, have you seen the video of the Crown Prince asking for the people of Iran to rise up and take Iran back from the regime? And also, I love the content, boys, and keep it up.
And I got to thank you for support, and I'd have to say I have. It was an interesting video, I'd have to say. And I got to thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, it did come in after the cutoff, but shout out to Louis Ziskin for putting in a $50 donation, and we do appreciate that support very much. Sadly, due to time constraints, though, we cannot address it because it came in after the cutoff, but we appreciate that as well. And we also have our next super chat here, which goes to, while I'll scroll up, this one goes to Cat in the Hat, who puts in a 10 and says, is Iran leadership screwed? Meaning, can the people be free and okay?
I think so. I think actually, if we keep pressing forward what we have right now, this can end up being a pretty good situation. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Dubert. And Dubert said, I can't help but notice the U.S. is now supporting 2 proxy wars against BRICS nations. And any thoughts about this being a national strategy?
Uh, I would have to say it's most likely not a national strategy of any kind, at least in my opinion. But I do think it was actually correction. I actually misread that. I would say yes, it is a national strategy because we generally are against that group. BRICS doesn't exist just for any reason. It's generally the we don't like America and the West coalition, and we want to bring them down. So that's generally why we see that those wars are being conducted in those ways. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we're on to the next one.
And we've got a $10 super chat from Shaggy Trip. And he said, it is not the Iran or people that hate us. It's the IRGC. Iran is a group of clans, etc. And what say you? An LOC.
I think it was support, but as far as we look at the situation, we are looking at it as the Iranian government, and they represent the nation. So we have to deal with it with that sort of a situation because it's very hard to differentiate between the government and the people. Because yeah, everyone in the world generally just works a job and doesn't really have any ill will towards any other countries or people in the world. But if we work off of that premise, then we're not going to get anything done anywhere because we'll always just say they actually like us, although the government that actually runs the country hates us and is working to destroy us. So I do agree with that, but at the same time, we have to largely work off of their government position, and their government is hostile to the United States, and we have to work with that accordingly. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath, who puts in an 8. And they said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA family, and killing it as always, gents. And please take one from the chat in LSA.
Hey, and thank you for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat, Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath. And a huge thanks to you once again for saying that we're killing it. And of course, long live the LSA. What do we got, Matthew?
And a live chat question goes to World's Tallest, who said, has any other nation threatened us if the USA attacks Iran? And thank you.
No one has, actually. Everyone's pretty much backed off and cleared the way for us to do it, actually. So I hope that addresses that live chat well, and we're on to that next question.
And we have a 7 from Double Tap Ranger Outdoors, who said, excellent channel and Canadian here, and can confirm many INT collectors watch this channel, military and otherwise, and amazing data production.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Double Tap Range Outdoors, and we love to hear it. Thank you once again for the support, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a $7 support from Ryan S. And Ryan said, Iran propaganda is some of the most delusional stuff I've ever seen. And do they truly think they're fooling anyone? And they act like Israel looks like Tehran. And also, live chat question, please, Matt, when you get the chance. Honestly, Ryan, I would say Iran, while they've got some pretty bad propaganda, like they're claiming to have full control over Israel's airspace, that's pretty bad, obviously. That's a big lie. It's delusional. It's Delulu land. I would say that Pakistan and India has Iran beat. I think that's the worst place for like absurd propaganda I've ever seen. It was the India-Pakistan situation, and Iran is a close follow-up, I would say. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Oh man, you couldn't even beat what was going on with India and Pakistan. Both of them were lying so badly, it was almost impossible for us to actually know what was happening because they would say the most outlandish stuff. Both countries would actually. That's probably been the most difficult war we covered. Not only because of that, but because there was like a flood of bots from both Pakistan and India that would come in here and just go off on us endlessly while we were covering it. That was probably, I'll be honest with y'all, that was probably the one conflict that, as far as like working on this from a business end, I hated covering the most, was that one, because of how it just, like, the amount of propaganda, the lies from both sides, and then on top of that, just the bot farms from India and Pakistan that would just come in and flood the chat, and then we got called like a banshee or something like that a couple of times. I don't even know what the hell that means, but beyond that, that was a very weird one, but Iran is getting there. Iran is getting there a little bit, but also Iran doesn't have bot farms to really make it that clear, like they did. So still not even close, honestly. Like, Iran is second, and a close second, and that's still not even close to what covering the India-Pakistan situation was like. That was a whole other can of worms in its own right. But still, I hope that has addressed that the best I can, and thank you once again for support. And we're on to the next one.
And also, this one did come in after the cutoff, but shout out to Patrol for putting in a $100 donation. And we thank you very much, Patrol, for that massive support once again. And thank you very much for the kind words as well. And once again, thank you for supporting the channel. And moving on to our next one here. This one goes to the Thankin, who puts in a 7, and also the Average Enthusiast that puts in a 5. And they did not leave comments, but thank you very much to the both of you for that support. We also have a $7 super chat that just came in from John Boyer. He said, I fixed my account, and now I have a voice. And he also said here, I think he was putting in a poll idea, but I think it came in kind of fragmented, so I can't really tell what it was saying. But thank you very much, John, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you for the support, John, because folks like you do make this channel possible. And it's great to hear that you finally fixed the account, but it doesn't appear that the super chat was able to come through clearly or entirely. But still, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, shout out to Darth Egregious for that 20 as well. And we appreciate that very much for that support, Darth Egregious. We also have a 5 from Thomas the Priest. And Thomas said, I enjoyed the channel and thank you for all you do.
And thank you for enjoying what we do, because we are honored to do it every day. So a big thanks once again, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Bob Nuff for putting in a $5 donation, along with Jason Carney for also throwing in a 5. And then we had one more. This one goes to, let's see here, the B-Man, who puts in a 5. And he said, Iran can't run fast. They can't run fast at all.
I would agree. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Jacob Clark. And Jacob said, in 1988, Operation Praying Mantis, the U.S. Navy decimated the Iran Navy, and it would happen again today.
I definitely agree with you on that. It certainly could and would happen again today if we needed it to. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, just one more reminder, folks. We appreciate all the support. Sadly, we will not be able to read off any more super chats beyond this point, any new ones, that is. Just a reminder, because I see people throwing it in and asking questions. But thank you to Nugget for that $20 support, and also Apollo for the 10 as well. But sadly, like I mentioned, due to time constraints, because we do have to get some sleep eventually, we will have to cut it short with new super chats. But thank you all once again for that support. We also have another one that just came in on our spreadsheet here from Zach Bagwell, who put in a 5. And thank you very much, Zach, as well, for throwing in that support. And he said, what do you think is the likelihood of ground forces being deployed?
If the Israelis are the only ones involved, it's near to zero. If the U.S. gets involved, it gets up to around 25%, in my opinion. And so I hope that does address it well. Big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Frank Ruiz Jr., who puts in that 5 and said, talk about some serious Freudian projection. It's about the airspace thing.
Oh, well, I do thank you for support, Frank Ruiz Jr., and I thank you for helping this channel to keep running. That's a pretty good one now that I understand the joke. I get it now. I get it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Babak, who said it's pronounced Avaz with a V.
Avaz with that Ava looking at. But beyond that, thank you for the support, Babak, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And we're on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from K98 Killer, who said they may have nukes, but no delivery system at this point, and I've seen a report of an unexplained earthquake, which could be an underground test.
We've seen those reports as well. We're very certain that it's probably not a nuclear test, at least for now. But I do thank you for support, and that is kind of true. They don't really have a delivery system, but their IRBMs could easily become one that they already have. And so I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Marlon Redis, as well as Alex Edwards for throwing in a $5 support. And also, while we're at it, big shout out to Thomas Kruger and Kyle Padell for saying the best news around. And thanks to both enforcers for the coverage, and Slava LSA.
Hey, and a big shout out to all of y'all for the support and helping her to keep rolling so that we can keep staying the best news on the internet. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Sun Wukong, who said, Enforcer Matt, Moab equals massive ordnance air blast. Mother of all bombs is a joke.
And I think it was support, Sun Wukong, and you are correct. I actually misstated that earlier. And so that is a correction live on air. And so with that, a massive thanks once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Babak once again. He said, that's Azadi Square in the center of Tehran.
That is Azadi Square in the center of Tehran that we were showing earlier, and we were able to geolocate as well. And big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Colin Megameni, who said, if Iran's regime falls, to what extent would that inhibit Russia's efforts inside of Ukraine?
I would say that it probably wouldn't inhibit their efforts at all because the Russians pretty much license produce all of their drones inside of the Russian Federation at this point. So it really wouldn't have much of an impact on Russia anymore. That's why Russia was so quick to abandon them, is because Russia really doesn't need them anymore. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, big shout out to Traveling Trans for that $111 support right there. Massive, by the way. And thank you very much, Traveling Trans, for throwing that in. We appreciate that. And also, we had a 5 from Andrew Hernandez, who did not throw in a comment, but thank you, Andrew, as well, for that support. We also had a 5 from Pat Main, who said, really appreciate the in-depth coverage. And I'm also glad we were able to deliver the in-depth coverage and also to deliver to all the people that watched tonight, which is about, so far, about 630,000 people, which is insane once again. But that's a lot. And we also have a 5 from It's Court, who said, I have never sent anyone on YouTube, TikTok, or any other platform money in my life, but this is the only live stream I ever look forward to, and I've been lurking since 2023.
And thank you so much for the support, It's Court. We're happy to hear that we're the first for you, and hopefully not the last. But I do thank you massively for the support, because you're helping us to make this thing possible now, and helping us to keep it running. And a massive thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to that next one.
And we also have a 5 from Larry Pickett, who said, as a vet, I would say we already have some of our ghost units in Iran along with the British.
Possibly so, but we'll have to wait and see once the post-op briefing comes out. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Kyle Padell, and he said, breaking news, Iran hired a particular unfavored YouTuber as a cook, making fresh, greasy glizzies for the Iran army.
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't believe it. I heard that guy was high as a kite today, running a show. That's actually technically against YouTube's terms of service, but I've never seen them really care too much about it. But beyond that, I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Lavezzi, who puts in a 5. They said, hello, Israeli here. Hamas did October the 7th. Hezbollah then started bombing the entire Israeli civilian north on October the 8th, and it was not a response to anything.
And that's exactly what I was saying. I got to agree with you, Levez. It wasn't a response to anything. They just started it, and then the Israelis started to finish it, and then the Iranians got involved, and now the Iranians want to complain that's getting out of hand, and for some reason there's people in America supporting their claim. It doesn't make any sense at all to me, but I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from the Shaniznit, who says, any thought on a Pentagon pizza rising and troops getting lobster and steak dinners? Seems like we're going back to the Middle East, LSA. Is that true about the lobster and steak dinners, though? Is that a joke, or is that true?
I think that might be a joke. I haven't heard about the lobster and steak dinners yet, but if the lobster and steak dinners come around, folks are about to be put into the business. Like, it's about to happen the next day. So I haven't heard of that yet. But if I hear of anyone talking about steak and lobster, oh, it's going down now. It's guaranteed. But I hope that does address that the best we can. You know what, Matthew? That'd be very important to know. If we could ever get a hold of, like, the food shipments to the Middle East, if we saw any significant portions of steak and lobster being shipped over within the next few days, or just within the days preceding this right now, we would guarantee know that something's about to happen.
Yeah, that would be crazy. The moment you see like luxury food popping up, yeah, you're about to have some unluxurious circumstances that you're about to get thrown in, probably.
Yeah, it's not gonna be the funnest, but the steak and lobster I've heard is actually pretty decent most of the time when they cook it up. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Vladimir, who puts in a 5 and said, pray for Ukraine. And also we got a 5 from Draco Rosso, who said, keep up the good work.
Hey, and thank you to both of y'all for wanting us to keep her going, because we're gonna keep her rolling. And we're on to the next one.
And we've also got a 5 from Carbs, who said, what caused the hate from Iran towards Israel to cause all of this?
I gotta say it really quickly, folks. 1 second, let me make sure to get that one. Let's see, what caused the hate from Iran towards Israel to cause? Oh, it's just because the Israelis are kind of Jewish. That's literally the whole reason they hate them, is because the Iranians are, like, quite truly anti-Semitic. They're an extremist form of Islam. They actually hate Christians, and well, they really just hate anyone that isn't their specific sect of Islam. So they hate other Islamic peoples. They hate the Jews. They hate the Christians. They hate everyone. It's generally an ideological thing, though, from a religious standpoint for Iran. So that's why they have a beef with Israel. And also it's the fact that Israel happens to be Jewish, and they also happen to be in control of specific holy sites that are important, well, kind of in control of specific holy sites that are important to the Iranians, and that's really one of the things that gets them. But the truth of the matter is, folks, is that if Hamas actually ended up taking control of all of Israel, Iran would then have a problem with them because most of those people, the Palestinians, are not of the same religious sect of Islam that Iran is in. So then the Iranians would start to sponsor a different group of terrorists to attack them. It's just the fact that it's just going to be an endless thing so that they have an external enemy to keep fighting. That's really the truth of it. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Scott, who throws in a $5 donation. Thank you very much, Scott, as well. He said, is there a stable Iranian government waiting in wings that can take over if their current government is toppled? And also, that sucker Carlson sucks.
I would generally agree with that. I'm not really a big fan of him because he has a very interesting way of trying to paint all of America's enemies in a positive light. I don't really like that kind of stuff. But beyond that, I would have to say that as far as we know right now, there isn't really a stable Iranian government in the wing anywhere. It generally had to be formed from the ground up once the regime collapsed, from what we know. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pedal to the Metal, who puts in a 5 and said, could Israel open the door to the fortified nuclear site and send in a bunch of attack drones?
Yeah, technically you could. It's just it'd be a little bit hard to open up the doors to the fortified nuclear site because then you'd have to go through a series of hallways and tunnels flying the drones to get down there, and then they could lose connection by the time they get that far underground. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Ryan S., who puts in a 4 and says, Iran should leave the straight B op, praying mantis, Israel equal roadrunner, Iran equal wily coyote, Acme missile.
Yeah, they actually do have a missile called the Emad that looks like an Acme missile in Iran, so they pretty much are like the modern-day equivalent of Wile E. Coyote. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to RJ Scott, Plazant, also Joey Dangerously HD, and Drunken Uncle for putting in a $4, $3, and $2 super chat, respectively. And thank you very much to the four of you for that support, and also saying LSA as well. And we do appreciate that. And we also have a $2 super chat from Star Fury, who said, I truly hope this is for real, and I need a vacation.
And I have to agree. I need a vacation as well. I mean, whew, man, this has been a lot of work this week. But we are absolutely happy and proud to do it. I got to make that clear. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address all of y'all's support, which is helping this channel to keep rolling. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, and he says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
Hey, and hit the like button. That is in order. And a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Burnaby Alex, who puts in a 2. And he said, the white smoke means they've chosen a new dictator.
maybe Burnaby Alex. That's actually a pretty good one. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, big shout out to Douglas Hemingway, as well as Sam Crenshaw for each putting in $2 donations, along with Jeffrey Welch and Papa Shaw for also putting in a 2 as well. We appreciate all four of you for that support. We also have a 2 from Joe Carr, who said Israel doesn't engage without a plan for dough.
And I would agree. But the thing is, at least from what we can see right now, that it does appear that the Israelis didn't really have too good of a plan of dealing with Fordo, because it doesn't appear they have any ordnance that would be able to penetrate the facility that's farther underground. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 2 from Whiskey, who said warm sake. Thank you very much for that, by the way, Whiskey. We also had a 2 from Joshua James, who said breaking news, the LSA is here, just bombed.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support to both of y'all, Whiskey and Joshua James. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and keeping it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to CO, who puts in a 2 and said, check out what the Israeli ambassador said today.
I wish we could, but we're trying to make sure that we have enough time to get to everyone else's super chat. Because there's still about, let's see, 7 left or so. But I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rana Skies, who puts in a 2 and says, look at the number 1 most tracked on flight radar. And that is Order 1, or it was Order 1. That is the E-4B, and it was landing at Andrews Joint Base. So we did see that. But thank you for that support as well. And we also had a 2 from FBI. Oh, open up. He said, it seems like a good time to hide in a fridge, fellas.
Maybe. I would say probably not though. We're probably all fine, to be entirely honest with y'all. We're good. But with that, I hope that does address that well. We're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Patrick, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Patrick, as well for that support. And we also had a 2 from Dan Koffler, who said, "What y'all are doing is great, unbiased, and factual."
And I thank you both for the support, Patrick and Dan Koffler. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, keeping this news going. So big thanks to both of y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Kevin Stevens, who said, "What is happening with the AUKUS treaty?"
Um, Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that at the moment. I haven't really been following the AUKUS treaty situation all too well. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. Best we can indeed. And as JW99 put it in the chat, and we are on to the next one. And actually, we ran out of super chats right there. I do thank y'all all so much for the support. We're about to get on into our live chats here in a minute. And I also want to quickly say, before we get into that, a big thanks to everyone for throwing in super chats, but we have had a super chat cutoff in place for a while, and so unfortunately, we are not able to address any of the super chats that came in after the cutoff because we wanted to make sure to have enough time to get a small handful of live chats and then round this thing out. We also had a banner at the top of the live chat for folks to see. If you did not see that, we're incredibly sorry, by the way. We were hoping that folks would see that and hopefully hold their support until tomorrow, but we do thank everyone for the support after the cutoff and before the cutoff, because all of y'all are helping this channel to be possible and helping us to keep this thing running. So a massive thanks to every single one of y'all. And with that, it's time for us to get some live chat questions. We're actually going to try and get, let me actually go scroll up this infinite link spreadsheet here. We're actually going to get all of them because we only have 5 live chats here in the roster right now. Most of them were already addressed earlier. So we're going to get the 5 we have, and then we're going to be rounding this thing out. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first live chat question, this one goes to Dan Metcalf, who said, "Do we know where the tankers finally landed? Was it in Kuwait?"
I would say that they've landed pretty much throughout the entirety of the Middle East. Some of them landed in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and elsewhere. So pretty much a large variety of places, to be entirely frank. So with that, we hope we addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
And we have another live chat that goes to Bradley Hall. He said, "When the United States enters the fray, how long do you think it'll be before the conflict is fully resolved?"
Considering how rapidly the United States moved in the invasion of Iraq, it could just be weeks, really. It could be pretty quick, actually. So I hope that does address that the best we can, at least with the idea I'd have at the moment. But it wouldn't be incredibly long. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to John Shields, who said, "Does Iran have access to a GPS system to target their missiles sufficiently well to target the military targets?"
Can you reread that one again?
He said, "Does Iran have access to a GPS to target military targets?"
Not specifically. They kind of have a crude version of GPS, but there isn't really a lot of Iranian satellites. I don't think there's any Iranian satellites in orbit that would allow them to have consistent GPS positioning at this point. So I'd generally say no. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Heather Fitzgibbon, who said, "Are the roads from Tehran still clogged leaving the city?"
From what we could tell based off of the road traffic indicators, it appears that most of the roads have emptied out at this point, although there are some traffic jams dozens of miles away from the city in all directions, possibly suggesting that the massive flow of traffic has just moved in one giant glob away from the city at this point in all directions. So I hope that addresses that well, and with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Joey Blaze. And he said, "What's the possibility of Russian Dark Fleet tanker having a collision due to Iran being angry at Russian non-support and Iran GPS spoofed another ship into the collision?"
It is possible. It's a little unlikely though, because we were able to confirm that that was an incident and a ship had collided and had been caught on fire. So it doesn't appear that it was like a spoofed sort of a situation. It was a real collision that occurred amidships on one of those specific vessels. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And we've reached the end of tonight's stream, almost reaching 410,000 subscribers tonight. And whoa, buddy, what a stream it has been. I got to thank you all so much once once again for watching so far. We've been absolutely honored to know that we got to cover the news for all of y'all once again today. Of course, we had a peak viewership tonight of 45.4 thousand people, and 653,000 people have watched the stream so far. We are entirely honored and appreciative once again to have had all of y'all's time covering the major breaking news developments in the Middle East as they were happening today. And if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, because we are doing this practically every single day as this situation is going on. And hopefully, folks, we'll be able to get back to some coverage of other world events as well once this starts to die down, like Ukraine, East Asia, and others. So a massive thanks to you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one. Take care, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us yet again today on another emergency stream to cover the breaking news happening throughout the day. And of course, we are going to be on red alert until we see if the U.S. is actually going to join the war with Israel, that is, against Iran in the coming hours or days. And that is currently the big development we're waiting for right now at the very moment. But with that, thank you all for choosing to watch the channel yet again today, and all 654,000 people that have been here by the very end. That is a hell of a lot of people, and we appreciate every single one of you, and also the support as well that came in tonight. But with that, we'll see you all tomorrow on the Short War video and another live stream. And thank you all once again. And with that, bye-bye for now.